The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Tuesday, July 17th, Wednesday, July 18th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. You could also check out our archives for free. They are on our YouTube channel. All you have to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Tonight is going to be a fantastic show. We're going to take you into your past. A past you may not even know about. How does that feel? Kind of freaky, I think. But that's what this is about. It's about taking you on a journey each and every night while you're here with us. And we love the fact that you are here and making this show happen on a nightly basis. When you spend almost 4 decades as a cop, you see almost everything there is to see. From the sad and grotesque to happiness and anger. Thankfully, there are more good days than bad. But sometimes, just sometimes, there is something that creeps up that is just weird and hard to investigate. Tonight, we have author Robert Snow coming onto the show to discuss past lives. The learned experience affected Bob so much that he actually wrote a book about it called Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, The True Story of a Police Detective's Reincarnation. You know, for millennia, mankind has wondered what is on the other side when we cross the veil, so to speak, from life to death. The Hindu religion, among others, believe that the soul is reincarnated over and over, with each life being a lesson to learn from the previous one. But does it exist? Or is it just another paranormal fantasy brought out into the brain by false memories? Let's find out. And at the bottom of hour number 3, of course, we got the encounter online with our news director, Everett Themer, talking about all the weird, strange news of the day. But we bring in author Robert Snow. You can find all of his books on Amazon. Man, is this guy creative. I can already tell, Robert, in looking at your book selection, we're going to have to bring you back because you have some interesting topics, my friend.
Well, thank you. Yes, I was a police officer for 38 years, and you know, there's the old saying, "You need to write what you know." And so, almost all my writing is about police work. It's about things either cases I investigated or various aspects of police work. And I've had over 100 articles and short stories in various national magazines, and I have 18 books published. So, I've been kind of busy.
No kidding. I thought retirement, my friend, was supposed to be nice and relaxed and you know, you do a little bit of traveling and pick up a new hobby like golf and fishing. Yet here you are writing books like there's no tomorrow.
Well, you know, if you're a writer, it's not something you just say, gee, I think I'll do that. It may sound like fun. It's something you're committed to, something that you want to be a real writer. It's something you have to want your whole life. For example, I was a police officer. I was a captain in the Indianapolis Police Department. I was there for 38 years, but I never really wanted to be a cop. I didn't. I kind of fell in that by accident. The only thing I really ever wanted to be my whole life was a writer. From my various earliest memories, from 3 and 4 years old, people ask me what I want to be when I grow up. I'd always say a writer. But, you know, but the problem about this sort of thing, being a writer living indoors is not necessarily synonymous. It takes a long time as a writer before you can actually make enough money you can live on it. So most writers have to have another job. And being a police officer, for me, was a very good job to have to support myself, but also gave me tons and tons of material to write about.
I got to ask you, Bob, I have met so many police officers or retired police officers that have gone into the field of aliens or cryptids or ghosts or past life regression. What is it about police officers now continuing the investigation into some of these unreal topics?
Well, I found out something when I was writing this book about my experience in investigating reincarnation, is that police officers as a whole have a lot of paranormal experiences. I talked to quite a number of officers when I was writing this book who'd had out-of-body experiences. I talked to officers who had seen a house where the objects moved by themselves and various other things. Police officers, because of the job, you're called to scenes or you're involved in situations that are so stressful that you experience a lot more paranormal things. But on the flip side of that, most police officers never tell anyone but other police officers. It's a thing they keep among themselves. They don't tell the general public about this. So that's why very few people other than police officers know how many paranormal experiences police officers experience. I talked to a number of officers who've had out-of-body experiences, and every one of them was during a moment of intense stress. It was one of these situations where it's a life and death intense situation when they'd have that. So when they'd have an out-of-body experience, and there's not that many jobs in the world where you have that kind of intense stress on you, and so that's why I think police officers have these kind of experiences more than anyone else.
Is it the fact that when you're a police officer for so long, that you are so used to investigating things and so used to questioning things that, you know, if you've had a weird experience as a police officer, because let's face it, you're called to all the paranormal activity, UFO sightings, whatever it may be, you guys get the call, and ladies, of course, as well. And I'm just wondering if it's the thrill of the investigation on something new that you can't explain that kind of keeps it going.
Well, I tell you the truth, when you have something like this, what you're really looking for is a rational explanation. Because occasionally, because that's not always when something looks paranormal, it doesn't always turn out to be paranormal. Sometimes there are rational explanations for it, and that's what you search for first as a police officer. Because as a police officer, you're taught in any case you're investigating to find concrete evidence you can show in court and say, this is why this incident happened, this is why this crime occurred. And so when you come to an incident that even may look paranormal sort of, you're trying to find concrete evidence to it as to what really happened. Is this really truly this happened? Because if it was paranormal, you're not going to get any concrete proof, or you're very lucky if you did find much concrete proof on these things. So when you call to an incident like this and you do your investigation and you can't find anything and it does appear paranormal, most times you just keep it to yourself. Or maybe you might tell other officers, but you hardly ever tell anyone outside of law enforcement.
So when you were wearing your badge, let's stay away from the past life regression here for a quick second. But when you were wearing your badge, did you investigate people calling in UFO reports, alien reports, Bigfoot, ghosts, whatever it was? Did you ever get those calls? And what was your reaction when you did?
Sure you get them, but most of the time when you get there, of course, a person said they saw a ghost, and of course there's nothing when you're there. Saying I saw this person walk through a wall, this ghostly figure walk through a wall, or I saw it, this, that, the other, and of course by the time you get there, there's nothing, and so you just think, and you try and be nice to the person, but you're thinking, okay, this is either this person's imagination or the person's crazy. But either one, there's nothing you can really do about it, and so if you didn't see it yourself, there's no proof there to see. You're just trying to be nice to the person. You just say, well, but there's nothing you can really do, and you basically chalked up the person's imagination or their mental condition.
How did you go about, deciding whether or not someone was, just calling for the sake of loneliness, or because, maybe they have some sort of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, compared to people who were having their own real encounter with something odd?
Well, most people who have a serious mental problem, like you said, schizophrenia or bipolar, well, there'll be other actions during while you're talking to them that'll clue you in. This person has got some kind of problems. And then again, in police work, you can't arrest somebody for being crazy unless they present a danger to themselves or others. If the person just acts a little crazy, but they don't present danger, there's really nothing you can do other than just, take the information and, look around, but you don't see anything, and say, thank you, we'll look into it, and I appreciate it, and leave. But there's not much really you can do. Now, if the person is off the end of the rails, and you can tell you're worried about their danger, there might be a danger to someone else, you can pick them in for a psychiatric evaluation, but that's the only way you could do that.
Did you ever encounter anything weird, strange, on your investigations where, say, you got the call from 911 and you responded to a report and there was something there that you couldn't explain?
Other than my experience, no, not really. There's nothing. I mean, you get the reports, but when I got there, I never actually experienced anything like that until my own situation developed. I had got calls, certainly, but you just track them up to imagination or a person's mental state. I had never had anything where I could see there was any kind of proof of something happening. That's why I was so hard when my own case came up of trying to find a rational explanation for it. I was certain there had to be a rational explanation for this that was not supernatural.
You mentioned that other police officers you talked to about the weird and strange things that they are going on. Why do you think officers, for us who don't know, bite their lips and button up when it comes to talking about the weird and strange? Because very rarely will an actual on-duty officer, talk to anybody about it. Even their family is silent and mum on it.
Sure. They don't want you to think they're crazy, because if they talk about it to you and you don't have any proof, just what the officers talk about, you think he or she's crazy. So the officers don't want other people to think they're crazy. That's why they will talk occasionally amongst other police officers, but they never hardly ever talk to family or outsiders about it, because they don't want to be thought of as crazy, because that's what it looks like to a person who does all they hear is your story but see no proof. So that's why you kind of keep it to yourself or amongst other officers.
And the brotherhood and sisterhood behind the badge, I mean, that is just one of those things you would share a beer over, say, hey, Tim, or hey, John, or Jill, or whoever it may be, you're not going to believe what just happened on my shift. But, I mean, you as, being a captain at that point, What were some of the strange stories that you had officers approach you about, or were they, because of your rank, a little bit embarrassed to even talk to you about any type of weird situation they had?
Well, actually, I hadn't heard too many stories from other officers until I was thinking about writing about my story. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't the real oddball and see if maybe this is more common than I thought. And I started talking to other police officers. There were some bizarre instances. For example, there was a case that's where like 3 officers went to a house, and they thought when they pulled up to the house, all of a sudden a saucer flew out of the house. Now, probably when you're a street officer, you're taking runs, probably 85% of your runs are domestic services or fights between husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, this, and that's what the officers thought it was. Somebody was throwing something out. And so they go up the run, and the people that were just scared to death, and they said, the house is going crazy. And they said, excuse me? He said, the house is going crazy. So the officer didn't know what to do. The three officers went inside, and they said, they're standing there talking to people, and all of a sudden, it's not only your young viewers won't know, there's a boom box, which was a large portable radio people used to carry around, just flew off a shelf across the room and smashed on the floor. And of course, the officers are looking at each other like, what just happened? Then he said that all of a sudden things started flying. So, things come off the wall, pictures that fall off the wall, things that fly off the table. And the officers they were kind of frightened, to tell you the truth. They didn't know what to do. So they backed back out and called down. They didn't put it on the radio. They called down on the phone to headquarters and told them that they need some help out here. They sent a chaplain out, one of our police department chaplains, and he came out and tried to pray over the house and get something done, but it didn't stop. And so I didn't realize this, but every Catholic diocese has a priest who specializes in exorcisms. So apparently our chaplain called the local diocese, and they sent a priest out, and he did some kind of ceremony of the house, and it stopped. Now, when it was over, the family begged the officer, says, please do not say anything about this. Said, we'll just be swamped by people. People will come to you. Hundreds and hundreds of people will come to the house wanting to see it. They begged them, please don't tell anybody. Because if they do, they know that the people will just be run over the people. People will be camping in their front yards and all that because of that. And the officers thought that was probably a pretty good idea too. Not to say anything, because they saw it, but have they got any proof other than what they saw? No. And so the officers basically kept quiet about it too. And actually, as a matter of fact, if I talked to one of the officers, and the other 2 officers didn't want to talk to me, they really didn't want to. I think they were afraid. I think he was crazy too. The one officer did talk to me about it and told me what happened. The other officer still didn't want to talk about it. It was just one of those things where you saw it, you believe it, but do you really have any proof? And I think the officers were afraid that if they talked about it too much, I would think that other people would think they were crazy. But most of the paranormal things, probably 75% of the paranormal things police officers experience are out of body. Awful lot of police officers have out of body experiences. I was amazed at how many of those I ever find. Yes, and it's always during moments of intense stress. I had a policewoman. She was a captain, a police captain. She told me about she'd gone to she was the first person on the scene of a police officer who was killed. And she ran up to the officer, and she could tell he was dead. He'd been shot in the chest with a shotgun. And she's kneeling the police officer, and she said it suddenly occurred to her she'd know where the shooter was, that she was a perfect target herself. She knew where the shooter was. And she said the next moment, the next second, she said she was about 10 or 12 feet above her body, looking down. She could see herself. She was like looking at the body, trying to figure if there's anything it could do, if you should give him CPR or that. But she says he's floating above it. And she said it happened, lasted maybe 20, 30 seconds. Then some other officers ran to the scene, and she went back to her body. Another officer told me a case where he said that he and another officer, they were detectives this time, plainclothes officers, and they were in a drugstore. And all of a sudden, somebody who knew them, the police officer ran in the store and said, hey, there's some guys holding up the grocery store next door. So the 2 officers ran over to the grocery store, and sure enough, there's a holdup going on. But unfortunately, the 2 officers just had revolvers, and these guys had the big weapons. And all of a sudden, they got into a big shootout in the grocery store. And of course, the officer said they were backing out of the store because they only had little small revolvers against these big weapons. And they were backing out. And he said that he got in the parking lot. All of a sudden, he found himself floating above the scene. And he told me at the time he thought he had died during the shootout. And basically his soul was trying to see what had happened. And he said, and all of a sudden, until he's up here about 30 seconds, he was just watching the scene in the parking lot. Then he all of a sudden he come back in his body because all of a sudden a bunch of uniformed cars came to the scene and got it all under control. they had called for help, and a bunch of uniform officers came to the scene. And that stopped it. He said, "We're right back to his body." But I had a number of those stories, but it's always, like I said, during moments of intense stress when you think you're in extreme danger.
We hear a lot about that from soldiers who spent time in nasty war zones, whether it was World War II, Vietnam, or even Somalia. You know, the real ugly things that they saw, never mind the PTSD, but I had heard stories about, you know, in war zones. I didn't realize that police officers were having it happen as much as they were as well.
But again, like in war zones, when you're in danger of being killed, when you suddenly think that your life is very, very likely to end this moment, it's a moment of intense stress and things like. And then again, that's when I found I never heard anybody. I never talked to a single person who had not about experience during, you know, a moment of, you know, just nothing happening. It was always during a really, really tense moment. Which would be the same thing, exactly as you talk about, the same thing in combat. If you're thinking you're going to get overrun and killed here, that would be some intense stress.
I can totally see that, and you know, I've never experienced the type of stress an officer has, or anything along those lines. I couldn't even imagine, you know, because I don't think I would make a good cop, because I would probably, you know, in some of those situations, especially if they involve children, I'd probably be the guy being arrested, you know, for beating the hell out of somebody who harmed a kid or something, you know. But you know, I commend all the men and women who have the bravery to wear the badge the right way, you know, and I think it's important to say that, especially with everything that is going on, you know, where, you know, on social media, a lot of police officers are getting roasted these days on social media, and I pretty much think most of it is unfair. But nonetheless, when it comes to the experiences that officers are having, do you think officers, especially the newer, younger generation, are a little bit more open to the fact of paranormal type activity happening on their shift and know how to deal with it, or aren't as, you know, what's the term I'm looking for? They're not as quick to shoot down the premise of what the call may be about?
I don't know. It's a little hard to say. I've been retired for over 10 years, so it's really hard for me to say, because I'm not really sure how the new officers feel. I'm really not, because I haven't been in police work for a little over 10 years, so it's really tough for me to really make a judgment on that, because I'm not sure what new officer would think. Again, not having worked with them and not, you know, being gone for so long, it's really be hard for me to say one way or the other. I'm not really sure.
But even you got a lot of friends on the force or everything. Have you ever heard about, you know, any of your police friends chasing a UFO or you know, complaining about, you know, somebody's having aliens walking around their backyard?
Well, you get calls like that, but no, I never heard of anybody who had ever had any kind of proof. You get calls about alien abduction and, you know, things like that. All law enforcement gets calls, things like this. But I never talked to anyone the officers, whoever saw anything, ever had any kind of proof or any substance at all, other than what the person said. So it's really, really hard to say.
Very, very cool indeed. Now, I want to start kind of breaking down your situation here, because I got to tell you, I watched or listened to a documentary about you when you were speaking, or a speaking engagement of yours from a couple of years ago, and you had me cracking up on a few of the parts, especially at the beginning, because your own past life regression experiences really happened on a dare. Yeah,
it wasn't something I would plan to do or ever wanted to do. It came about. I'll tell you what, I was, of course, like I said earlier, I never really wanted to be a police officer. I got out of the military. I was in during the Vietnam War. I did my 4 years and got out, and I was basically, you know, I'm unemployed and needed a job. And like I said, I always want to be a writer, but that sounds good, but, you know, making money writing and living is a different story. So I needed a job. My brother was a police officer here in Indianapolis. And, of course, this is during the Vietnam War. So they were really hurting for recruits. And he told me, hey, come on down. Says, hey, you know, try it out, see if you like it. If not, you know, it's only up to you. You know, you don't have to stay. Just go and try it. So that's how I became a police officer. But I actually always want to be a writer. And, of course, I started writing about my police experiences and started getting published. But the thing about being a writer, if you want to be a writer, you also have to be a reader. You can't just write. You also have to read. You have to read everything. You can't just read from your field, the things you do. You have to read from all fields because you want to see how other writers handle things. If you see a really bad piece of writing, you want to evaluate why it's bad, so you don't do that. Or if you find an especially good piece of writing, you want to see how the author did it so you can plan your own work. So I've always been a very voracious reader. Well, so anyway, so I used to belong to a lot of book clubs, various book club, Doubleday Book Club, and all these different book clubs. One day on one of the book clubs, I had a little, you used to get a little pamphlet in the mail, and it had a book called Coming Back by Dr. Raymond Moody. Now, Dr. Moody had apparently done a number of did some research and investigation into near-death experiences, but this was a book about, he had a friend who was a psychologist who did past life regression therapy. For the listeners who don't know what that is, occasionally people will have a problem. Like say you go to the doctor, you got some terrible pain in the elbow, just some terrible pain. They do an MRI and X-ray, and there's nothing. There's no reason you'd have pain. And doctors can't find anything. Occasionally they'll send people past life regression therapy. What this is, the psychologist or psychiatrist will hypnotize a person and supposedly take them back to a past life. And almost always they'll go to the incident that caused the elbow to hurt. They'll say they were in the Civil War and they got hit by a cannonball in the arm or something like this. But the interesting part about the therapy is it works. The person, when they come out of the hypnosis, almost always the pain's gone. Now, most psychologists and psychiatrists didn't used to believe, or I don't know if they still don't believe this is real. They really don't believe that you're really going to a past life. But they believe that the pain is psychosomatic, and so you use pain's imaginary, so you use imaginary past life to cure it. The point is, it's a very successful therapy. It works, and so they use it quite a bit. So anyway, Dr. Moody had a friend who did past life regression, and she basically talked him into getting himself regressed, and that's why he wrote the book Coming Back about. He was hypnotized, and he went to 8 past lives, and the book was very well written, very interesting book. He talked about going these past lives he experienced and what they were and everything. But interesting part, at the very last of the book, he's talking about he doesn't really believe they are past lives. He couldn't really decide what they were. He wouldn't commit one or the other. And that's kind of the way I felt. After I read the book, I thought, this is just your subconscious mind. When you're hypnotized, people realize you're actually delving into your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind contains all your memories from your life. Some memories you may have forgotten in your conscious mind, but they're still there in subconscious. And he thought, and I had agreed, these were just memories, old pieces of memories, brought up, pieced together to make a story. But they weren't really past lives. And I thought the same thing. I really did. So anyway, about 6 months later, I was at a party. And it was actually, my wife was also a police officer. She was a child abuse detective for a lot of years. And she used to work at the Child Advocacy Center, which is it's a place away from the police department where you take children who've been abused. And so they don't really have to go into the police department. It kind of scares a lot of kids. This is a nice child-friendly facility somewhere where they have prosecutors, social workers, and police officers. Anyway, they were having a party there, and my wife and I were attending the party. Well, I was there. I was talking to a person in the police department who's a psychologist at the police department. And her and I were talking about, just making party chit chat about, the movies we'd seen, and we started talking about books we read, and it occurred to me about this book. And since she was a psychologist, I thought she'd be interested about it, and I told her about reading Coming Back. And I didn't know at the moment. I didn't know when I talked to her. I had no idea. But she did past life regression in her practice. Now, I didn't know that at the time. And she asked me what I thought about the book. And it was getting kind of late in the party, and I had a bit to drink. And I think I was kind of probably obnoxious, and I told her how silly I thought the idea of reincarnation was and past lives. It was all this is just wishful thinking by people who don't want to believe they die, or people who want to find excuses for their present life. They say, gee, my present life's such a failure. It's not my fault, though. It's bad karma from past lives. And I told her I thought it was just a bunch of bull. I thought it was just still a silliness and bull. Again, I think I might got a little over the edge of it, especially since she used that in her practice. So it basically got down to facts where she dared me. She said, well, if you think it's a bull, try it yourself, and then tell me what you think. And at first I said, no, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. I'm not doing that. And got done finally, I said, oh, you're scared. Now, you don't want to ask a man or a police officer, you're scared. Of course you're not going to say you're not scared. So anyway, again, I'd had too much to drink and everything, and I was trying to scared. I said, okay, I'll do it. She gave me the name of a colleague of hers who did past regression. She says, go see her, have it, then you tell me if you think it's bull. So I said, okay, I'd do it. But now the next day when you get more clear-headed, I thought, I ain't doing that. That's stupid. I'm not going to do it. But then it seemed like now I didn't run this person that often, the police department. She worked there as a detective and a psychologist, both. But it seems like after this, I would run into her every day. And I'd see her, and she'd say, "Have you made the appointment yet?" And I'd make some kind of flimsy excuse, like, "Well, I had 6 meetings a day, and this thing I couldn't. I'll get to it. But it seemed like before this, I didn't see her maybe every couple of months. But it seemed like after that, it seemed like every time I turned the hallway, there she'd be. Oh God, there she is again. And you're thinking of some flimsy excuse, and over and over about, "No, I'm going to." And
at this point, you must be thinking, "Geez, how do I dodge this?" And you must be getting pissed off with yourself because you're running out of excuses.
Exactly, and you're feeling like, what? And again, like I said, I didn't run this woman that often. I swear. Before this, I didn't see her every couple of months. Also, I'm seeing her a couple of times a day. It's like, oh God, there she is again. Next day. So finally, I just got tired and said, okay, what I'm gonna do? I called, I made the appointment it was a Dr. Mary Ellen Griffith. And so I made the appointment. I thought, okay, now I was kind of ticked. Now I was kind of ticked about the whole thing. I thought, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go there. I'm going to make a record. I'm going to break a tape recorder, make a record of the session. I'm going to cooperate 100% with whatever she asked me, Dr. Griffith. And I'm going to come back and show with this psychologist how stupid this whole thing was, how it was all just bull and nothing true. And so I went ahead and made the appointment. And so come the time for the appointment, I go to see Dr. Griffith. Wonderful lady, very, very, very nice lady, very sweet. Had a funny, kind of a sing-songy type voice, very soothing sing-song type voice. Really, really, very nice lady. So I went in and I told her about wanting to record it. She'd had no problem with me recording the session because she recorded them herself. So I set my tape recorder down. And again, I had my mind. I'm going to do whatever she says. I will try and cooperate 100% so I can back and show this police department psychologist that this is phony. There's no past lives. You're not going anywhere. This is all imagination. So anyway, so we sat and talked. We had Dr. Griffith and I. She asked me, what kind of problems do you have? Do you want to see me about? I told her, I don't really have any problems. I just thought past life regression sounded interesting, and I wanted to try it. And she said, okay, that's fine. So she said, okay, sit down on the couch. So like all psychologist offices, she had a desk and a chair and a couch. So I didn't lay down. I didn't want to get that much involved. So I sat down on the edge of the couch, folded my hands. She says, close your eyes. So I closed my eyes, and then we start doing a lot. She does a lot of imagery. She asked me to describe things to her. She'd asked me to describe my college graduation, and then something that happened in high school, and something in junior high, and something elementary. Now, I've been a police officer for a long time. I've done a lot of questioning. I can see exactly where she was headed. Every memory was earlier in my life. I could see what was going on, but I'm going to cooperate. I'm not going to, I'm going to do everything so I can go back and show the person that I was right and they were wrong. This is stupid. So anyway, we're talking. She's had me describe in great detail various things about my life. And the interesting part is she kept talking about, don't worry, you'll be protected. You'll have this white circle of white light around protecting you. And I kept thinking, protect from what? For what? I've been a police officer a lot of years. It takes an awful lot to scare me. But anyway, she finally said, okay, are you ready? I said, yes, I'm ready. She said, okay, can you see a balloon? And it was kind of funny because I was sitting on a couch and the window's to my right, and I could see a big purple circle with my eyes closed, but I figured it was just the sunlight coming through the window. I told her, yep, I can see a purple balloon. She said, okay. She said, now imagine yourself getting into the balloon. Okay, imagine going up. So I'm cooperating. I'm going to be 100% cooperative. And she says, watch it go up. So I watch it go up. She says, look down. What can you see? And it's kind of funny. At the bottom of my eyelid, it looked like I could see little points of light down my feet. Now, I was sure at that moment it was just reflection off the floor. But it was kind of funny because it looked like little points of light down below. But anyway, I felt the moment it was just again reflection on the floor. So anyway, we're traveling along this balloon. She said, okay, I want you to land the balloon. I said, okay. And she said, okay. But nothing happened. This one thing I'm thinking, hey, this is your daydream, not mine. I'm not going to imagine something that didn't really happen. She said, land the balloon. So I'm trying, nothing happened. We probably went through this a dozen times. She said, okay, land the balloon. Let's see where you're at. And again, I'm just trying to cooperate, but I'm not going to make anything up, or I'm not going to imagine something that's not really there. So we went through it a dozen times. She told me, there's a control of your head, pull the control, take the balloon down, but nothing happened. I'm thinking, oh man, this is really silly. I don't know what am I doing here. Finally, she said, okay. She says, obviously there's nowhere here you want to land. She says, can you see a mountain in your mind? see if you can see a mountain. Now, I figured this time I've been sitting there probably 20 minutes on this extraordinarily hard couch with my hands folded in my lap. And I figured I must be really getting tired because all of a sudden I could see a mountain. But I mean, I couldn't see a picture. It was like a daydream picture of a mountain. I said, yeah, I can see a mountain. She said, okay, imagine a balloon landing on a mountain. So, but I could do that. I thought, well, I must be really getting tired. But now my mind's starting to cooperate a little bit. So anyway, I could imagine. I imagined the balloon laying on the mountain. And she said, what do you see? And there's enough. I could see what looked like a log cabin. But it was kind of unusual because the logs weren't horizontal. The logs were going vertical. I didn't know till later when my readers sent me a letter said that was the French version of the log cabins, that they put the logs vertical. But anyway, so I see it. I thought, again, I'm thinking, boy, I must be really getting tired. I am starting to see things that are, I'm getting my imagination going wild. So anyway, she said, go in the cabin. What do you see? Now, I didn't see anything. Again, I'm thinking, this is your daydream. I don't see anything. And she said, okay, now try and imagine a meal, this kind of thing. So I'm trying to imagine everything. So then she said, okay. She said, now we're done here. Says, we're going to walk out of the cabin, and we're going to walk down into a valley. Said, there's 12 steps. Okay, so I'm going to count the steps as we walk down. And she starts this 12, 11, so it's kind of like a stage hypnotist, it's 9. And I'm thinking, oh, God, what am I doing here? I feel like an idiot. And she's counting down, we're counting the steps down, 6, 5. But interesting, when she got to 1, something really bizarre happened. All of a sudden, I was in a valley. I don't mean I imagine or I could see in my mind. I was in a valley. I was standing in a valley. Now, I knew I wasn't real stupid. I knew what happened. I realized that I had been hypnotized. This was just hypnosis. But the interesting part of the valley, it was so vivid. It was as clear as regular experience. As if my eyes had been no clearer than the room where I was sitting in. This valley was that clear. I could see. I was walking along a path in some woods, and I could see leaves on the trees next to me. I could see veins in the leaves. And interesting enough, I could feel a breeze blowing in my face. Now, I assumed at the moment this was just the air conditioning in the room, but I could see the leaves moving, and I could feel it blowing in my face. So anyway, Dr. Griffiths, and it says, okay, look down and describe yourself. So I look down, and I see a couple of really dirty feet and kind of hairy, gnarly legs, and I'm wearing some kind of really filthy, matted fur. And my left hand I'm carrying looks like part of a tree limb. I almost laughed at the time because everybody knows what a caveman looks like. Everybody does. I knew that's what this was supposed to be. And again, I'm thinking this is something you see in the movie, Bob, or read or TV or something. And I said, this is all it is. This is nothing. But the thing about the whole point of the thing was, though, this is so vivid that it was fascinating. It was kind of like if you ever go to Disneyland or Disney World, many of the rides are just so vivid and realistic and vivid, that you feel like you're really experiencing something. Now, you're really not. You're really not. But the experience itself is so vivid and lifelike, you think you are. And that's what this felt like to me. This is like one of the greatest amusement park rides I'd ever been on. This was fascinating. Because I was in that valley. I could feel a breeze in my face. I could hear birds chirping. It was fascinating. I knew it wasn't true. I knew this was just hypnosis, playing tricks on mine. But at the same token, I thought it was fascinating. Again, it was like an amazing amusement ride. But then so I'm walking along, and all of a sudden, I start saying something. I start talking, and I don't know. I say it before I know I'm going to say it. In life, you always have a split second before you say something to think what you're going to say. But all of a sudden, I start blurting out words. And I didn't realize I was going to say. I told her, I live here. I live up on the hill. And I looked up on the hill, and I could see a rocky outcropping. I told her, that's where I live. And all of a sudden, I had memories. Not of Bob Snow. Bob Snow had memories. And memories of the body I was in. That this is where I lived. There was a cave up there amongst the rocks. It's where I lived at. And I thought, boy, this is bizarre. But it's. And the funny thing, she kept saying, "Don't worry, you got white light protect you." There wasn't anything scary at all. I thought, matter of fact, I thought it was just fun. But it was really just. It was kind of neat. It's kind of like being on an LSD trip without the danger of drugs. It was kind of like that sort of thing. I mean, it's really so realistic and so fascinating, but there's no danger involved in this one. So anyway, she said, okay, I want you to go to your cave. I want to go to where you live. Now, there's enough. I didn't walk there, just like if everything phased out for a second. And next thing I knew, I was at the entrance to the cave. And the funny thing, I walked in. She said, go in. I walked inside, and all of a sudden I had this awful smell. This person was not hygienic. The cave smelled terrible. And I thought to myself, as I'm sitting here on the couch, Because the interesting, while this is all happening, I'm walking in the cave, I can still feel the couch, because that couch was hard. I could still feel it ache, my buttocks aching sitting on the couch. At the same time, I walked in the cave, but it had this awful smell. It was real. This guy was really unhygienic, and you think, where could that come from? But again, I figured this is hypnosis working on my mind. So anyway, I'm describing the cave to Dr. Griffiths and what's going on, and finally she said, okay, so I want you to go to your death. Said, I want you to go to death and what you see. So again, I didn't move anywhere. It'd be about 2 or 3 seconds. It looked like kind of gray fog. The next thing is, I wasn't in the man's body anymore. I was floating maybe 7 or 8 feet above it in the cave, and he was laying. I could see him laying on the floor. He's a little skinny fella. He's under some furs, and he was coughing. He was coughing real hard and shaking. It looked like he had some kind of terrible illness, and he was dying. And so I told her about my death. She said, okay, now she said, go out of the cave. She said, now what does life teach you? And again, I thought, I don't know, what the hell would I know? But all of a sudden then I blurted out. I don't know where this comes from. I just blurted out. I said, this life was bad. This life taught me that I can't be alone. I need someone. That loneliness is bad. And I said it before I even knew I was going to say it. It caught me by surprise. So anyway, Dr. Griffith said, okay, says, now look on the valley. Do you see a light? So I look up, and there's a big bright light above the valley. She said, okay. Said, now I want you to go into the light. She said, I want you to go to the light, and I want you to go to a life when you did have someone. When you weren't alone, we did have someone. So okay. So next thing you know, again, I got 4 or 5 seconds of gray fog. Nothing, you can't see anything. After you go in the light, everything's gray fog. So next thing you know, all of a sudden, when I started out the scene, it's kind of like it's blurry. Then all of a sudden it's like whack, everything comes into focus after a second or two. And all of a sudden I'm walking down a city street, but it's not today it's not today's world, because I can see there's horse-drawn carriages going by and there's gas lights. But it's funny than that. It was a hot summer day. I could feel the sun beating down. I'm in a closed office. Dr. Griffith's office is a closed office, and a little dark in there. But I could feel the sun really beating down on me as I walk along the sidewalk. And Dr. Griffiths asked me to describe myself, and I was wearing a fancy suit, and I had a walking stick, and walking down the sidewalk. She asked me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to meet a woman." She said, "Okay." I said, "Now see yourself meeting a woman." So all of a sudden I see a very beautiful woman in a red dress. And I go up to her, and she takes my arm, and we walk down the sidewalk. And she asked me, "Okay, where are you going?" I said, "We go to a sidewalk cafe." I see herself sitting down in a sidewalk cafe. And she says, "What do you order?" I said, "Well, she orders some kind of special water, and I ordered a glass of wine." At that moment, I'm in this scene during hypnosis. And I'm thinking to myself, this looked like to me like the late 1800s with the horse-drawn carriages and gas lights. I'm thinking right then, this isn't straight. I didn't think that men during the 1800s drink wine. I thought that men drank during 1800s, they drink whiskey. And I thought, that's why it made me think this is all my imagination going on. I wouldn't think a man. I don't know why. At the moment, I just didn't believe that'd be true. I thought this is you see a little crack in my regression here. This is something from this life. There's something really happened. And again. So I've described the scene. So Dr. said, "Okay," she says, "now go 5 years forward in your life." So I go 5 years forward, and I'm in a hallway, and me and this woman are having this real vigorous argument. And I tell her it's my wife, and we're having this real vigorous argument. And I'm not sure what it's about, but I told Dr. Griffin I think it's about money. And again, I don't know why I knew that, because I don't remember the argument being anything, but I told Griffin I think it's about money. Again, I'm saying things I know I was going to say. So anyway, I leave the argument, and I go into a room down the hallway, and it's a studio. It's an artist studio. And there's the whole roof of the room is skylights, and the right wall is solid windows. And I'm thinking, wow. I'm looking around, and the walls are hung with dozens and dozens of paintings hanging around. Obviously unsold paintings. And again, like in the life of the caveman, I suddenly realized things from this person's life. I realized this is my job, that I'm a painter, that I make my life doing painting. So I described the room to her, how it looks like, and all the paintings and everything. We talked a minute. She said, "Okay," and I said, "Go another 5 years forward in life." So suddenly I'm at a party, and I don't know what it's about. I'm the guest honor, and everyone is coming up and congratulating me, shaking my hand, pat me in the back. I have no idea what for. But the funny thing is, I could feel this person's emotions I was in, and I could tell this is one of the happiest moments of his life. This was a extremely happy time for me. And I don't know why. I had no idea what everybody's congratulating me for, but I suddenly could feel the happiness this person felt. Because it was kind of funny, because people think when you're under hypnosis that you're under complete control of the hypnotist. That, people see these stage shows where they make you cluck like a chicken, things like that. And that's not really true. If you're in hypnosis, you're still in control. You know what's going on. Because Dr. Griffith said, okay, go to another 5 years forward. But I wouldn't do it. And the reason I stayed, again, you think about it, how many times in your life do you feel extreme happiness? Maybe the birth of your marriage, the birth of a child, or something like that. That's what he felt that moment. Just unbelievable, extreme happiness. And I really didn't want to leave. It really felt good. So she had told me 3 or 4 times, go forward. I wouldn't do it. Finally, I did. But I stayed there for several minutes because being in this life at that moment was so enjoyable. But anyway, so I finally did go, and I see myself walking this huge. I'm in a huge estate, a huge garden in this estate, and I'm real depressed about something. Again, we talked about that and all this thing. She finally said, okay. She said, I want you to go to your death. I said, go to your death, and then what you see. So I go again forward to the scene, and I'm laying in a bed, and all of a sudden I see myself rising up out of the body, and I go through the ceiling. Now, come on. Everybody's seen ghost stories on TV and movies. They know what ghosts, of course they do. They rise up. Of course, they always go through the ceiling. I thought this is just some scene I've seen somewhere in some movie or TV program. Something. That's all this is. But interesting, I'm looking around, and I'm over a huge city. This is a huge city. I'm above the ceiling. I'm above the roof of this place I was at, and I'm around a huge city. So Dr. Griffith asked me, he says, okay, what did you regret about this life? What did you learn? What did you regret? And I said, I regretted that we didn't have children because my wife couldn't have children. I said, we should have had children, but we couldn't because my wife couldn't. So she said, okay. She said, I'll tell you what. I said, now, why don't you go into the light and we'll go to another life. But again, like I said, the hypnotist doesn't have control. I didn't do that. Instead, I saw myself flying through some woods. And I could tell that it was late fall. It looked like a real crisp, chilly night, but all the trees still had leaves on them. So I figured it was a late fall night. And next thing I know, I'm floating on the second, third story of this big mansion. Now I'm looking in the window. Dr. Griffith kept me, go to the light. I wouldn't do it. I'm floating in this mansion. I'm looking in the window. And over there, it's like a drawing room. There's a big roaring fire in the fireplace. Nobody's in the room, but there's a big fire in the fireplace. And above the fireplace is a painting. And I told Dr. Griffin, I wanted to see one of my paintings before I left. Before I leave this life, I wanted to see one of my paintings. It was a still life painting of a bottle and a fruit and a large sun behind it. And so I told Dr. Griffin, I'm not ready to leave. I wanted to see one of my paintings before I go. So anyway, finally, after this, she told me to go into the light. I said, okay. After I saw my painting, I went. She said, now I want you to go to your life as a female. Go to a life here as a female. I remember I laughed at myself that moment. I thought, yeah, that's going to happen. She says, go to your life as a female. Well, sure enough, it did. So next thing I know, when I have 4 or 5 minutes of fog. The next thing I know, I'm in a female's body. I can look down, look like I'm probably a late teens, early 20s type girl. I thought, holy, And again, now this has really struck me as bizarre because now I don't know where this would come from, what kind of movie or book this come from, type thing. I thought, well, God, I didn't know, it kind of caught me by surprise. So anyway, I'm standing in a bunch of woods in front of a big altar. It's a circular altar with pillars all around it. And again, I'm just looking at it for a while. I'm describing the scene to Dr. Griffith. Then suddenly, as in the other 2 regressions, I suddenly have a thought from this person's mind that what this place is. I told her, this is where I belong, this is where I work. I bring stuff down to the altar. So we talk again about my job, and I told her what I do. I told her I'm with a bunch of other girls. We're all virgins. We have to stay virgins. We're pretty. We take stuff to the altar and all this kind of thing. So anyway, she says, okay, now go forward 5 years. So I go forward 5 years, and I see myself, I'm in a wagon, and there's a couple oxen pulling this wagon, and next to me is the older man. And I look to my right, and there's a little child sitting there, a 3 or 4 year old child, and I know it's my daughter in this life. But interestingly enough, it's during this regression, people always say during regressions, you'll see people from your present life. This is the only person I recognize from my present life. Interestingly enough, it was my stepdaughter in my present life who is my daughter in this life as a female. But anyway, what had happened, I knew again what had happened to this person's mind. I obviously hadn't kept up my requirement of remaining a virgin, and if the people at the altar had given me or sold me to this man, since I was no longer work at the altar. So anyway, we went to his farm, but he died real soon afterwards. So he's dead, and again, I got a little daughter, and so what I do is I take her back to the altar, and I kind of abandon her there. I give the little girl to the people at the altar, and the terrible funny thing is, at this time, I have this terrible sense of guilt. It's just all over me. So I know what I'm doing. I'm abandoning her because it would sure be a lot easier for me if I had to have a little child tagging along with me. And what I basically do is I go back and I give her to the people at the altar, let them raise her and use her as a servant at the altar, rather than take her with me. And I had this terrible feeling of guilt, terrible feeling of guilt. And I'm thinking to myself at that moment, how stupid is this, Bob? This is not real. But I have this almost like a pressure on your chest pushing down. You feel this time of guilt. So anyway, I give her up and go off my own. I end up in some kind of city by either a large body of water, either ocean or the sea, where I grow old. And Dr. Griffith says, go to your death. And I end up drowning there. I get caught in some nets and I'm drowning. Interesting enough, when I'm drowning, I could taste salt water. I'm sitting here in this little closed office, and I could taste salt water.
That's odd.
And I thought how bizarre that was. But anyway, Dr. Griffith said, okay, now go in the light. Go into the light, we'll go to another life. And so I was really glad because I had this terrible guilt about it. And I kept thinking how foolish this is about abandoning my daughter. So anyway, she said, okay, I want you to go into the life you were before your Bob Snow. Go to the most previous life before your present one. So, okay. So I go into the light, and 4 or 5 seconds later, I'm back in the body, and I know who I am. I'm the artist again. I can tell I'm the artist again. But now I'm back into my studio, and at the moment I'm painting a portrait, and the portrait's just about done. But interestingly not, it was a portrait of a hunchback woman. The woman who was posing was a hunchback, and I'm painting her. And the funny thing about how clear this visual, I could see every brushstroke in this painting. I could see every nuance of this painting I was painting. And I talked to Griffith about it. I told Dr. Griffith I'm painting a portrait. I said, I hate painting portraits. I hate it, but I need the money. I really need the money. And I could feel this person's emotion at that moment, and I could feel this desperate, almost desperate need for money this person had. There's a desperate need for money. So we went to talking about this, and I'm finishing the portrait of the hunchback woman. So next thing, she wants me to go to another scene. I go to a scene where I'm having an argument about someone about the lighting. I'm going to have an exhibition of my paintings, and I'm having an argument with someone about how my painting is not, well lit enough and all that. So we go to the next scene. Next scene, I'm in a garden, and I hear a piano playing. So I walk to this house, and I see my wife is in there, and she's playing the piano for a bunch of friends. And Dr. Griffith asked me, so where are you at? And again, before I knew what I was going to say, I answered, we're in France. Now, I had no idea. I had no idea why I think we were in France or any clues to it, but I said that. So Dr. Griffith said, okay, go 5 years forward. So anyway, I'm going to the Great Fog, and suddenly in the Great Fog, I got overcome by this emotion. I said, she died of a blood clot. The doctor said she died of a blood clot. Now, I had no idea who I was talking about, but I could tell whoever this woman was extremely important to the artist. I felt like I wanted to cry. I was I felt this emotion overwhelming me that who this person had died of a blood clot was so important. But then after I said that, then all of a sudden the recording, their tape recorder I brought along, clicked off. And just shut a big loud click. I opened my eyes, and that was it. That was it. The regression was over.
How did you know, and we only got about 2.5 minutes left, how did you know that going through this entire process that you weren't subjected to any type of hypnotic suggestion?
Yeah, well, that's why I had the tape along. That's why so I could hear again what Dr. Griffith had said to me. And she did nothing but just guide. She didn't make any suggestions about where I was or what I was. She just basically just kind of guided me along. Because that's one of the things that was one thing I wanted to be certain of. It's why I had the thing taped, so I could show other people also that there was no, there's no saying, well, gee, you're in France, or don't you think you're in France? This kind of thing. No, it's just basically, where are you at? And I said France type thing. That's why I was pretty sure that it wasn't. But now I was caught in a real quandary after I got out of it, come out of the regression, because I'd gone into it so sure of myself, so positive. This is so much baloney, and nothing. Actually, I didn't believe I could be hypnotized when I went there. I thought I was much too strong-willed that I couldn't be hypnotized. But now I had not only been hypnotized, but I'd sit there and babble like an idiot for the last 35, 40 minutes. I was really kind of embarrassed. I was done, and now I'm kind of embarrassed. And I tell you, Dr. Griffith asked me, well, do you see how these things you've seen apply to your present life and all this? And I tell you, I didn't. I couldn't see nothing. I just wanted to get out of there. I really did. I was really embarrassed at the moment.
Well,
because I feel like I've...
If you don't mind, Bob, explain that embarrassment. We got about 90 seconds before we got to go to commercial, but I'd like to hear why you were embarrassed.
Because you're a police officer. You deal with rational, concrete things. You're a police captain. You're the backbone of the police department. Police captains are the backbone of the police department. You really are. You're the ones who run it. You're the backbone. You don't. Now I had been talking for the last 40 minutes, babbling like an idiot about all these things, and at the moments they had seemed so real. When I was under regression, they had been so vivid and so real that I had talked at that moment like they were real. Not that, this was complete opposite of what I expected to happen. It really, come on, this is not what a police captain does. Now, you would sit there and you'd babble, like I said, like an idiot for 40 minutes and talk like this is really happening. And now I was embarrassed because this wasn't supposed to happen. This really wasn't supposed to happen. It really wasn't. This is not something that you'd expect to happen. It really wasn't. I just was embarrassed by by what had happened, how I had acted during it, how I had seen. I know I had seemed all enthused during what was going on because you were seeing these scenes and they were so vivid and clear. But now that your eyes out of it, it's like, oh hell, what have I done? Now I just felt kind of foolish, and I just want to get out of there. I made that some kind of story, Dr. Griffith, but I don't know how to think about it before I can see how they apply. I really just wanted to get out of there. I really didn't. I didn't know what to do. I was so flustered because it had been so vivid. I mean, so incredibly vivid that I was so flustered because I had no explanation at the moment for it, and I was so flustered. I just wanted to get out of there.
I don't blame you. I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Author Robert Snow is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He'll be with us for another hour and a half, 90 minutes, talking about past life regressions and what he's learned from it, why he believes that it is actually happening. We'll get into reincarnation as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the show, little Mikey Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada is back with Ghosts of the Great White North. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. And if you're looking for our archives, they are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Secundo Genitor. Secundo Genitor is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, we are talking with author Robert Snow. Now, Bob has a lot of great books on a plethora of topics regarding law enforcement on Amazon. Just look him up, author Robert L. Snow, and you will be able to find it. But tonight, we are focusing on a very interesting book of his called Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, the true story of a police detective's reincarnation. Welcome back, Bob. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. In the first hour, you gave a very in-depth description of a lot of the experiences you had because you were not a believer of the whole past life theory. You thought it was hokey. You thought it was garbage. You thought it was something that fools do. Yet here you are writing a book on this topic because you were so convinced. Why at first did you think it was just phony garbage?
Because it sounds to me like wishful thinking. People, of course, it scares people when you die. You don't know what happens, and people like to think they know what happens after you die. Of course, that's the whole basis of most religions, and I figured this is like that. People wanted to believe it, and I also thought that people also wanted to be able to blame bad things in this life on something they had nothing to do with. In other words, because I have a rotten life this life, but it's not my fault. It's bad karma. So I thought, again, it was just wishful thinking. I thought this is, not anything I believe in. Certainly, because I'd never seen any proof. I'd never seen any. I always thought if there's really past lives are true, surely by now somebody would have some kind of proof, wouldn't they? But nobody did, as far as I know.
Obviously, because you were a captain in the police force at that time, you kept that pretty quiet.
Oh yeah. And believe me, this is not something police captains talk about. Police captains really do not go talking about New Age, things like this. Especially, no matter what kind. Again, like I said earlier about the paranormal things, you may talk. I didn't even tell you the truth. I didn't talk to you. Matter of fact, when I got home that night for Dr. Griffiths, with my regression with Dr. Griffith, I didn't even tell my wife knew what I was doing. She was friends with the police department psychologist. She knew she thought it was stupid, and I told her I thought it was too, but I got kind of trapped into it, and so I didn't even tell her what had happened when I first got home. I really didn't. I just said, yeah, it was kind of interesting, and she said, yeah, okay. So I didn't tell anyone. But the problem with this is that this thing was so vivid. I mean, absolutely startling vivid that it really started to bug me. It really did. I mean, I found myself in the days following, and even though I tried to tell myself, Bob, this is just your subconscious mind pulling up memories from this life, scattered memories, reorganized to a story, and give it to Dr. Griffith. That's all it is. This thing about the cavemen, movies you've seen, are you seeing something about paintings about the artist or the altar girl? This is not real experiences. I kept telling myself these are old, forgotten memories from your subconscious mind brought up. That's all it is. Forget it. And that sounds good, but I couldn't. I was thinking about it. It was so vivid, I couldn't help but think about it. Matter of fact, for the first couple of years after regression, if I closed my eyes, I could still see the scenes. I could still see it vivid. For example, the painting, The Humpback Woman. For the first couple of years, if I closed my eyes, I could still see every brush stroke. I could see every bit of that painting, every single brush stroke of the painting. And that really started bugging me, because what bugged me is I couldn't stop thinking about it. I mean, I would go to work and I would think about it constantly. I would think about it all the time. I kept telling myself, Bob, quit it. It's not important. It's nothing. It's nothing supernatural, nothing new. Forget about it. But I couldn't. I just no matter what, I just kept. I had to think about it, 100 times a day at least. And then I started dreaming about it, type thing. And it got to the point where I could see that I was becoming obsessed with this. This was not just, gee, this is starting to bug me. This had become an obsession. I couldn't think of hardly anything but this. I would just see these scenes over and over in my mind. And if you ever saw a TV program, movie set back in the 1800s, I mean, immediately everything had flashed back to you type thing. And it got to the point where I could see I was becoming obsessed. And one thing I found during my police career is people with serious obsessions, it very seldom turns out good for you. If you have a really serious obsession about something, it very seldom turns out good for you. So it started to bug me that this was happening to me. I thought, wait a minute, I got to do something about this. And I knew what I needed to do. What I needed to do, I realized, was find either the picture of the Hunchback Woman, the painting, or the painting still life I'd seen in the mansion. And if I found one of those two paintings, I would realize where I'd seen it in this life. I would remember saying, oh, yeah, that's where I saw it. I saw it this exhibition, 12 years ago or 5 years ago. And then I would know this was all from this life. It was not a past life thing. It was all from this life. So I decided what I'm going to do, I'm going to find one of those two paintings. I figure I'm not much of an art, art fan. I'm really not that much, don't know that much about art or deal that much in art. So I knew these had to be at least semi-famous paintings, or I would never have seen them. They couldn't be obscure. I felt for sure, because that's how else to be my memory. So I thought, well, I had a plan. What I was going to do on my lunch hour, I was going down to the Indianapolis Public Library. Now, this was this was pre-internet days, and so you just couldn't put Hunchback Woman painting in the search engine and have it pull it up. And in these days, you had to actually go to the library and pull books off the shelf. And it was a little research in pre-internet days was a little tougher than it is now. And so I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll go to the library on my lunch hour for the next week or so, start going through the art books at the library, and I will find one of these two paintings. Because, again, I felt they had to be at least semi-famous. I would never see them. So that was my plan. So I got a bunch of yellow pads, and I put A on one page, B and C and D on the next page. So I wanted to make sure I wrote down what books I looked at so I wouldn't do any doubling back. And so I went to the library, went to the art section, and I was immediately, amazed at how many art books the library has. They have hundreds and hundreds of art books. But a lot of police work you find is not accomplished, as you see on TV, by shootouts and chasing people. A lot of cases are solved through meticulous police work, through combing through records, combing through things like this. And I realize that's what this is going to be done by. Awful lot of police work is done by, again, combing through records and finding out one little piece of information you need to solve the case. So I started going through it. It took me several months, but I ended up going through every single art book in the U.S. Public Library. I didn't find either one. Didn't find either painting. Now that's really kind of bugged me. I couldn't understand it. I figured, come on, because they had, again, hundreds of books, and I ended up going through every single book. Now, a couple of times in the books you'd go through and you'd see something, especially still life, you'd see something, oh, in my heart leaped my chest. That was it. Then I look at it and I realized it wasn't, because again, I could still see these paintings really clearly. So anyway, after several months not doing it, I wasn't sure what to do. What do you do now? It's got to be famous. So what I started doing, I started going visiting art galleries and bookstores around Indianapolis. I thought, well, maybe Public Library doesn't have the most recent books, so I went to Borders and Barnes and Noble and various other bookstores, started looking through their art books. And again, that took me a couple of months, and I still didn't find anything. So then I went to a couple of art galleries. I went to several art galleries in Indianapolis and described the paintings to them and asked if they knew about them. Now, again, this is pre-internet days, and I found something kind of interesting in those days. There was no central listing of paintings anywhere. In other words, you couldn't say, gee, I want a so-and-so painting by so-and-so. Nobody could you couldn't pull up a file and find where it was at. In those days, the only way you could find it was by calling other galleries and asking if they knew. So I visited maybe a half dozen galleries and described it, and everyone told me the same thing, that unless you have a name or something or have any idea where it's at, you won't be able to find it. So finally, I wasn't sure what to do. So finally, I was kind of stymied. But it's one of these investigations. When I started, I felt certain it'd be a really easy investigation. I felt certain I would find within a week or two. I would find it, the case solved, the case closed. So it became kind of a challenge to my investigative skills. And so what I did, I actually went to a New Age store here in Indianapolis, New State, not in uniform, incognito, and bought a couple of books about past life regression and things, and see if I could see if something had happened during that would help me in my investigation. And I found out that, interestingly enough, that an awful lot of people had many similar experiences during past life regression. Had many similar experiences, not identical certainly, but very similar experiences to what I had. But interesting, on one of the books, they had a section of it, they had scripts for self-hypnosis. You could actually try self-hypnotize yourself to go to past lives. And interesting, the one I saw were very much like Dr. Griffith. It was a whole lot of imagery and everything. So I thought I'd try. So one night when the kids and the wife were in bed asleep, I went to my den upstairs and tried it. Let me tell you something. Self-hypnosis is a lot harder than it sounds like, a whole lot harder. But I tried it maybe 10 times, and only twice I felt myself going into the kind of this phase that I was with Dr. Griffith, into the state I was with Dr. Griffith. Like I saw myself going into hypnosis twice during these attempts at hypnosis. But both times only lasted maybe 2 to 3 seconds. Both times I saw the image of a number, 1917. Twice I saw it. Then it'd be like pop, like a balloon pop, and you'd be back out. Oh, I had no idea if one night it was a amount of money, was a address or what it was. All I saw was number 1917. I finally even went back to Dr. Griffith for a second. I thought maybe I need to go back to her. I could go back to the artist's life, and maybe I could realize where I got the information from about. I realized where in this life I got the information from. So I actually went and got a second point with Dr. Griffith. But interesting enough, even though I went back into the hypnotic state I had before, and I had several very kind of interesting past lives, but they are all too far back in history to be verifiable. But maybe 4 or 5 times she tried to get me to go to the artist's life. I couldn't do it. Nothing. She wanted me to get to the artist's life, but nothing would happen. She would say, go to the life as an artist, go to your most previous past life, and this kind of thing. Nothing would happen. Absolutely nothing. And when I was done, I asked her why. She says, you already know everything you need to know. At the moment, I didn't think that was true. I thought, no, I don't. It turned out she was right, but I thought, no, that's not true. So what I finally had to do is I finally had to give up. I was in charge of homicide. I was the commander of the homicide branch for many years in the Annapolis Police Department. And when I was there, we had an 83% clearance rate, which is very, very outstanding for a major city police department to have 83% clearance rate. But that still means that 17% of our murders went unsolved. Now, when a murder goes unsolved, you just don't throw it in the trash. You just deactivate it. In other words, you put it on the shelf and it sits there. Nobody's working on it. But if new evidence come along, you reactivate it. And I felt like, well, this is just like a murder case that we can't solve. I'm just going to put it on the shelf. There's nothing I can do. I mean, I thought, I couldn't think of any other avenue to investigate to bring in clarity. So I thought I just had to give up. I thought, well, if I give up, the obsession will go away. Well, it didn't. It kept on. So anyway, a few months later, it was coming up to my wife and I's anniversary, and we wanted to go somewhere for the anniversary, somewhere neither of us had ever been before. So one morning she calls me at work and says, what do you think about going to New Orleans for our anniversary? Our anniversary is last April, and I thought, well, that'd be great. The weather wouldn't be real hot yet and everything. It'd be great. So we decided we'd go to New Orleans. So we did. We booked a flight and room, went to New Orleans. We spent a week in New Orleans. And my wife is a real history buff. And in New Orleans, you can't turn around and bumping into something historical. So we spent the week going to all these plantations and the 1812 battlefields and things like this. So anyway, we also, at nighttime, we usually go into the French Quarter, and you visit, go to these bars and hear the bands and enjoy yourself in the French Quarter. But I noticed every night we went into the French Quarter, and the way in, there's all kind of stores down in that area. They had a lot of really neat stuff in it, a lot of really neat, historical memorabilia, antique stores, but they were always closed when we were going into the French Quarter at night. So anyway, the last day we were there, our plane didn't leave till the evening. So we had a whole day in New Orleans. And I told her, why don't we go window shopping in the French Quarter? And she thought it was a good idea. So we went looking at these antique stores and the memorabilia stores and what have you. So we finally got down to Royal Street. Now, in the early 1990s when this happened, Royal Street in New Orleans was all art galleries. Okay, so we started looking at the art galleries, and we started off at the end of the street, and they had some art galleries had some beautiful, beautiful paintings by old masters, some really beautiful paintings. But notice kind of interesting is we're walking down the street looking at all these art galleries. The paintings are coming more obscure, the artists less well known. And they started off with some really magnificent stuff, and it's getting less and less. So finally we get down to the end of the street. We go into an art gallery, and it's two-story. It said modern art upstairs. I've never been a real fan of modern art. My wife is, I'm not. So you went upstairs, and I'm just walking along the floor, the first floor, walking along at the paintings. And I didn't recognize any of the paintings. I didn't recognize any of the artists, certainly. None of them are famous enough for me to know them. And I'm walking along. And anyway, I get to the corner, and there's a portrait sitting on an easel in the corner. And I'm walking by, and I give it a glance, and I start to walk on, and it's like I walked into a glass wall. I stopped so suddenly. I turn around and look, and there was a portrait of the hunchback woman.
No way.
Now, let me tell you something. As a police officer, I've been in lots of situations where I was scared. I mean, you don't ever believe a police officer tell you he or she's not scared. I've been in lots of situations where I'm scared, where you're going into a dark building to look for somebody who's got a gun. You're going into a home for somebody who's done shot 3 people, and you're going to get him or her. And you're a lot of scared. I've been in a lot of scary situations with police officers. I don't think I've ever been this scared. The reason I was scared, because in those situations, you're going in for a burglar or you're going in for someone with a gun. You've had training and experience. You know what to do. You know what that person is most likely going to do, so you're prepared for it. In this situation, I had no idea what to do. I didn't know. I had no experience, no training. I didn't know what to do. But more than that, it's more like, come on. Things like this, they might happen in the movies and TVs. They might happen on the X-Files. They don't happen to people in real life. What are the odds of seeing a painting during my regression and then searching for it for months and not being able to find it, and then stumble onto it by accident in New Orleans, a little obscure art store? Let me tell you something. Police officers, we don't believe in coincidences. We really don't, because we so very often find that any really major coincidence in any investigation is not a coincidence. It's simply something made to look like a coincidence by someone, hoping you'll think it's a coincidence. But this case, I couldn't imagine how that would happen. I mean, who would make this coincidence happen? And for 5 minutes, I stood there. I mean, I had electricity. My body was on fire with electricity, really up and down my arms, up and down my legs. I'm looking at this painting, and I'm thinking, no, Bob, this is not the painting. You think it's the painting. It looks close. It's not. It's just close. But I closed my eyes, and this time, again, I could still see every brush stroke. And opened my eyes, and this was the painting. I mean, every brush stroke was exactly the same. So now I'm kind of feeling the idea that I'm not really there. I'm in a nursing home somewhere. I'm hooked up to wires on a machine. I'm in a nursing home. I'm slobbering on myself in a nursing home somewhere. Because I figured this can't happen. This really, in real life, again, movies and TV it happen. In real life, it doesn't happen. I'm really thinking, I'm not here. You just think you've had a stroke. You're in a nursing home somewhere. You're dreaming this. That's how desperate I was at that moment to try to come up with how could this be? What kind of coincidence could this be? I didn't know what to do. I just kept looking at the painting. Finally, about 5 minutes, one of the salesmen come over, and I guess he thought he'd seen me staring at this painting for like 5 minutes. He thought, hot dog, we got a buyer here. He come over and says, say, I bet you're thinking how good I look over your fireplace. Now, even at the moment, that struck me as humorous. I'm thinking, sure, I want the picture of a portrait of a hunchback woman I don't know over my fireplace. Sure. At the time, at the price on it, I think it was $5,000. Sure, I'm going to pay $5,000 for a hunchback woman out over my fireplace.
You bought it, didn't you?
But no, I didn't. No, I didn't. Because at the moment, I was still convinced I had seen, okay, now this was an unbelievable coincidence. I mean, come on, this was a really bizarre, but I'm thinking, I'm trying to rationalize myself how this could happen. But I'm thinking, well, come on now. The odds of winning the Powerball lottery are about 250 million to 1. But somebody still wins it, don't they? Now I'm trying to rationalize. I'm trying to make myself rationally explain this. I mean, really, the odds of winning the Powerball lottery are 251 million to 1, but somebody still wins, don't they? And I'm thinking, okay, this is just a really, really bizarre coincidence that happened to me finding this painting. But I'm still convinced I found it somewhere in this life. I've seen this painting. Now, the fact I could stumble onto New Orleans is pretty bizarre. It really was. But I still was convinced I had seen it somewhere in this life as Bob Snow, had just forgot about it, and that's where the story come from. I talked to Griffiths. So anyway, I told the salesman, I don't recognize the painter. Who is it? He said, well, hang on a second. I got a little biography of him. So he went over to this old desk. He pulled out this sheet of paper that had like a little paragraph on it. Said the artist's name was J. Carroll Beckwith. And so I read the biography of him. And it immediately kind of, again, more electricity around my arms, because I immediately had 5 confirmations from my regression. For example, I thought, well, obviously there was a painting of a hunchback woman, and I saw, interesting enough, the date of birth and death. Beck was born in 1852, and he died in 1917. And I remember my self-hypnosis, 1917. And I found that he had lived during the late, and I'd seen him, I thought it had been the late 1800s. And that was when he lived, and it was during the late 1800s when he was basically a painter during that time. And interesting enough, the little biography said he had spent quite a bit of time in France. And I remember telling Dr. Griffith that we were in France, and also said that he had won, excuse me, a number of awards during his life for his painting. And I remember being at that one party where everybody congratulated me for some kind of big accomplishment. So, again, this is only 5. These are 5 little things, but it was one of these things where it kind of wrenched in my gut, type squeezed my stomach. So anyway, I wrote down some information about him because I thought, well, good. Okay, now this is I told you, like a murder case. I've been deactivated. And what did we do with it? We deactivate him. Now, if new evidence would come up, you reactivate him, bring him back off the shelf, start looking again. And I thought, well, that's what's going to happen in this case. I got some information now. I got information about this man. I can go back to Indianapolis. I'll research him. I'll remember where I saw that. I'll remember, it was 10 years ago at some place I saw about this. I figured I probably saw his painting at the exhibition. There was a little biography of mine right there, and that's where I got all this information for Dr. Griffith. I felt convinced once I got back to Indianapolis, I would be able to solve this case. So anyway, after we flew back to Indianapolis, the very next morning, I go back. Again, I got to go to the public library because there was no internet these days. And so I go to their art section and start investigating, and I find there was practically no information, very, very little information about Beckwith. His name was James Carroll Beckwith, and it was very, very little information. On any smaller book on artists, he was not in it. He was in some of the larger books on artists. He would be mentioned, but only a few sentences at most, which I thought was kind of bizarre. But I thought, come on, this can't be so, There's got to be, how would I know about him? So anyway, I asked the librarian there in public, do you have anything else on him? And she says, no, I'm sorry, this is all we have. She said, but I'll tell you what you need to do. So you need to go up to the Art Museum library. There's an art museum in north side of Indianapolis. So they have a much more extensive library on artists. Go up there, and they may have information on him. So I did. So I drove up there, went into their library, and I talked to the librarian, a very nice lady, told her what I was looking, told her why I was doing it. I told her I was researching James Carroll Beckwith, and asked her what information she had on him. Well, she found a little more than they had, not very much more than that, but she found a little bit more. But it was a really bad thing. Is what the things she found. I had 5 more confirmations. I'm kind of up my head here. Like, for example, I told you I thought he had died in the fall. It looked like a fall day, and sure enough, he died last October 24th. And I said when I rose up out of my body, I was in a huge city. Well, he had died in New York City. And I also remember saying during my regression that I painted portraits but didn't like painting portraits, but I need the money. Well, that's what Beckwith, basically, that's what the information by him said. Though he didn't like painting portraits, he had been mainly a portrait painter during his life because it was only way to make money. And another one said that when his paintings were always full of sun and bright color. And I always remember that one painting over the fireplace had a sun, and it was a bright color of fruit and bottle. Again, but I'm trying to rationalize myself. Again, okay, Bob, fine, but you've seen this somewhere. So I said, I'm thinking, wait a minute, you got to found it somewhere. She said, by the way, she said, I have some information. She said about an exhibition of Beckwith's work that was held right here in Indianapolis. And boy, right then, my heart just leapt. I thought, thank God I found it. She says, yeah, we have information about an exhibition of his work that was held here in Indianapolis. And I thought, I found it. I knew it. At that moment, you're thinking how foolish all this stuff you've been thinking about past lives and about regression, how foolish all this stuff was. There was an exhibition right here in Indianapolis, and that's how I saw it. Unfortunately, when she found it was an old faded newspaper clipping. It was 1911. Was the last time. And it was just awful because I was so happy for a moment because I'd solved it. There's no paranormal, no past life stuff. I had seen it. Unfortunately, the last time he was here was 1911. So, but the interesting part, though, also, she had found several references to him on books from John Singer Sargent. Anybody who knows American painting, maybe next to Whistler, John Singer Sargent was probably the most famous American painter. Well, it turns out that he and Beckwith were good friends. They had actually gone to the same art school in Paris and had shared an apartment for 5 years in Paris. And so that's why they had information about Beckwith in books about John Sargent. But more important than that, I noticed one of the references you gave me had a little footnote at the bottom. It said this information came from the diaries of James Carroll Beckwith, now stored at the National Academy of Design in New York City. And so I knew right then what I had to do because this was really bugged me. I'd already had 10 confirmations. Nothing I found so far disproved it. But these were all, to me, were not major enough that would swing my belief thing. So I figured what I need to do is I need to look at this diary. I thought to myself at that moment, if I could find one or two things in Beckwith's diary that were completely counter to what I saw. In other words, for example, I said we couldn't have children, my wife couldn't have children. If he had children, then there's something wrong. Or, for example, I saw him order wine. If he's a teetotaler, then this is wrong. This is not real, because you wouldn't see that in a past life if it wasn't true. I mean, you wouldn't see some complete discrepancy in a past life. So what I wanted to find at that moment, I wanted to find one or two things about Beckwith's life that weren't true, weren't what I said in the regression. I figured if I could find that, then I know this is not true. This is just some messed up thing. Something. It's not real a past life. This is a messed up memories of mine. So what I did is I wrote a letter to Ashcam Design and asked about the diaries, if it possible to view them. They said they were too fragile. They didn't mold them out, but that they had made microfilm of them, that I could order the microfilm through the Archives of American Art at Smithsonian. So I went back to the public library and I made a interlibrary loan request to get the Beckwith diaries. But it'd be a couple weeks to get them. And so while I was doing that, I sat down and listened to my tape again, and I wrote down everything I had said during the regression that could be checked. It could be verified or not verified. I thought, well, I'm looking for one or two facts that are not true, so I could prove this is wrong. This is not a real past life, because you wouldn't say you didn't have children if you did have children. So anyway, I sat down and wrote, and I found I had 28 things I had said during the regression that could be proved. Now, I'd already proved the first 10. But I didn't think they were large enough, big enough that it was going to swing me. So I waited. So anyway, about 2 weeks later, I got a copy. I got the diaries from New York. They were on microfilm from there. Unfortunately, I found out that Beckwith was a very avid diary keeper. He started when he was 19, and he almost religiously did it, and did it till the day before he died in 1917. In other words, he kept a diary for almost for like 40 some years. It turned out it was 17,000. I counted them up. It was 17,000 pages. Now, what do you do now? I got 17,000. You start
researching
pages.
Like a mofo.
Well, I know, but come on. Yeah, the thing is, I got this for 2 weeks. He started when he was 19 and finished. And matter of fact, his last entry is the day before he died. It was actually the day before he died in 1917. So you've got, 46 years of diaries, 17,000 pages that book turned out to be. And I mean, what do you do? And I started looking through them. And interesting enough, I found out that he'd also had written an autobiography. And I thought, oh, that'd be great. I went to read this diary, read our biography. Unfortunately, though, he started in the spring of 1917, and it was only 23 pages. And he only finished 23 pages before he died, so it didn't really help. So what I decided to do, I just thought I'd just sample a little bit. What I do, I'll just go through, and I'll sample a little bit from each microfilm roll. Just kind of looked at it. And I found interesting enough, some reason I have no idea why, he would pull out some pages and would type them. He would actually transcribe. He wrote it in his diary, then he'd transcribe it in typing. I had no idea why he did that. But unfortunately, the things he typed didn't show me what I wanted. There were actually 3 more confirmations. One of them talked about it. He was in art school in Paris with John Singer Sargent, and during the summer break one time, he went to Venice. He talked about Venice, about him living on burnt eggs and wine. Because again, I didn't think men drink wine nowadays, and obviously I was wrong. He also made one of the type pages was mentioning the fact that his wife couldn't have children. That he'd always wanted to have children, but they didn't have any children because his wife couldn't have children. And the third thing he had was a type part about a trip to the Gardens of Versailles in France, and how he'd painted the Garden of Versailles. And in my regression, I had told about being in this gigantic garden, and how depressed I was during this garden. So again, it found 3 more things. So now I didn't know what. Now what do you do? Okay, you read. It's all getting close to 2 weeks, and I got to send it. You can actually renew it for 2 weeks, but then you got to send it back after that. What do you do now? So I wasn't sure what to do. So I finally decided maybe it's time to tell my wife about this. Maybe probably because I've been doing a lot of research on this and going to the library constantly, and I figured maybe I need. The thing about police work is one of my biggest admonishments to my officers, my detectives, my biggest admonition to them was never get emotionally involved in your cases. If you get emotionally involved in your cases, you get tunnel vision. If you get emotionally involved, you can't see things on the periphery. You really can't. You're so obsessed with getting this case solved, with doing something in this case, that you'll miss things. And so that's why I always preach to my officers, do not get emotionally involved in cases. And let me tell you something about this case. I was really emotionally involved in this case. I mean, I was over my head emotionally involved. And I thought, Bob, what you need to do, you need to have have somebody outside look at your information and see if maybe you're missing something. Maybe you're so involved in this, you're missing something. So I finally told my wife, I finally sat down one night with her and told her what I was doing. Now, that didn't go well. She really thought I was nuts. She really did. That did not go well. She thought I had slipped a couple gears here. Because again, when you first tell it, it doesn't sound terribly rational. But I had told her, wait a minute, now hang on, look at my information, look at the evidence, look at the information. So I showed her everything I had, all this information. And I told my wife is a very, very good detective. I've always been kind of envious of her detective skills. She's one hell of a detective. A very, very, believe me, in Indianapolis, if you was a child molester, you did not want to have her get you in her sights because you was gone. You were gone for a lot of years. She was one hell of a good detective. So anyway, I asked her to look at my information. She looked at it, and basically what she told me is, Bob, says, this is nothing. You've seen this in a movie or a book. That's all it is, and you just brought it up. I tried to tell her, no, there are no movies. No, but Beckwith was simply not important. He was not. He was not a famous painter. He never painted any world-class paintings anybody ever recognized. He never has any world masterpieces. He just was mainly a portrait painter who made a living painting portraits. So finally she said, no, come on. She said, I'll tell you what I'll do. She said, I'll look in this case. I'll investigate. I'll find where you found the information. Actually, that was what I was hoping for. I was kind of working to that area. I was hoping she'd say that because I really wanted a second eye on my case. I wanted somebody with some really good investigative, what she had, good investigative skills to look at this. Had I missed something? Had I got so much involved? So anyway, so she didn't say, I don't want to talk. She didn't want to talk about it. I won't talk about it anymore. So I said, okay. So she said, so she went out and then to try to investigate. Well, about a month.
I have to cut in here for a second here because it sounds like your wife went cop mode on you.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. Well, I mean, again, you're looking like all cops. You're looking for a rational explanation, and she thought, boy, I've gone off the rails here because I'm on Looney Tunes Street here because I'm seeing past life things, and she says this is not true. She was going to find a rational explanation for it, so she went and investigated, and she took about a month, and she couldn't find absolutely anything. She found absolutely nothing more than I found. So now she didn't know what to say. I mean, because now she was kind of stymied. She really was. But basically what she told me, so okay, says, maybe you found something. Maybe you did. Maybe it's just something magnificent. Maybe it's something important. Keep it to yourself. She says, this will not go well. Police captains do not go spouting this. Do not go tell people about this. She says, maybe you did. Maybe this is amazing. Just keep it to yourself. And at the moment, the more I thought about it, I thought, boy, she's probably right. She's probably right. I tell you what, I said she's probably right. This could be bad. So I sent the microfilm back to the Archives of American Art and went back to my regular life type thing. And after this is when I talked to these other police officers about paranormal events, and I started looking into it. I found an awful lot of police officers that had that. Not just me. An awful lot of police officers had paranormal events. So I decided, this is silly. I'm not going to ignore this. So what I did is I ordered the microphone back, and I had hard copy made of it. I had all, because that way, because the thing about doing it, you have to go to the library and do it on their machinery. And if you want to make notes, everything takes time. You'd have no time going through this. So I actually had hard copy made of 17,000 pages. And so I actually sat down and read every single page, all 17,000 pages. But interesting enough, while I was doing this, I also realized, gee, I probably ought to go back to New Orleans. I wasn't planning on buying the painting. I just didn't want to spend $5,000. But I just wanted a picture of it because I could prove it was true. I mean, until this time, only really proof anybody had was my word that I'd seen it. So I thought, so my wife and I actually went back to New Orleans. I went to the gallery where I was at, and lo and behold, the gallery was closed. It had gone out of business. Because this was about, maybe a year later. So I started canvassing the neighborhood to other art dealers and found what happened to the paintings. And I finally found the art dealer who had gotten the Hunchback Woman. He had purchased a lot of stock in this place when it went out of business. And I told him, I want a picture. He said, well, I can't. It's been sold. And then one thing I found out about art dealers, they religiously guard the identity of their customers for several reasons. They don't want to share them with other art stores, number one. Number two, do you really want the public to know you got, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of artwork in your house? So they really religiously guard the identity of their customers. And he told me, so here, he gave me a little pre-printed card, said, put your name, address, and phone number on here. Tell the person you're interested in this painting, and if they want to, they'll contact you. And I tried to explain, all I want's a picture of it. I don't really want to buy it. He said, this is all I can do. And so I did it. I never heard from him. Never heard from it. Never. To this day, I still haven't heard from anybody. I was hoping the book come out, maybe I'd eventually hear from him, but I haven't yet. So anyway, so I went back to Indianapolis and started reading the guy going on the microfilm. And this was really an intense job. It took me a year to go through every single page in that thing. And I told you, I kept looking for the one, come on, give me one or two things that are not true. And then I'd be satisfied this is not real. There's something wrong. This is not real. But it's not, like a lot of things, investigation. You go into investigation, a murder investigation, most of the detectives go in with an idea of what happened and who did it. But every once in a while, you go into investigation. You're sure this person A did it. You're going there and you suddenly realize, whoa, I'm headed down the wrong path. Yeah, person A didn't do it. Person B did. You got to change directions. Well, that's kind of what happened this path, because I kept looking for those one or two facts that weren't true, and I couldn't find them. Instead, I kept finding one confirmation after another. I told you I found that they couldn't have children because his wife, on interesting enough, October 24th, 1888, which is coincidentally it's 29 years a day before Beckwith died, on the exact same day, 29 years later. His wife had an extremely difficult miscarriage, and after that they couldn't have any children. And he writes in his diary quite often how much he'd love to have children, but he couldn't because his wife couldn't. So it's another confirmation. Again, I told you when I was talking to George Griffith, I felt this desperate need for money. Right. For a need for money. And that's Beckwith's diary is probably 30% of him whining and crying about needing more money. He never felt he made enough. He was actually pretty comfortable in his life. If you you see how he lived, and you looked at his resources, he was actually pretty comfortable. You would think in his diary, you would never think so. He whined and cried his diary constantly about needing more money. His problem was the most he ever made for a painting was $1,000, which even late in the 1800s is a lot of money. But John Singer Sargent, his good friend, he charged $25,000 and had people lined up for it. Other people he knew, other painters he knew knew Claude Monet, he knew Carlos Duran, he knew a lot of famous people. But they made a lot more money than he did. It just drove him crazy. They were making as much money as he was making. And so his whole diary is just constant full of that desire. I told you I'd seen the one scene where his wife played the piano. And he went into this house, she's playing the piano for friends. And sure enough, in his diary, they had piano. They had two pianos, one in his home. He also had a home in the Catskills. And so he was talking about being poor. He had a summer home in the Catskills. They lived mostly in New York City, but in the summer they had the home in the Catskills. And there is a picture, I found a picture of his wife playing the piano for friends there. When I went to my studio during my regression, I described to Dr. Griffith as having a skylight and one-wall windows. In his diary, he describes his studio as having a wall windows and a skylight, and also described it being full of unfinished paintings, of unsold paintings. And also, when I originally described myself to her, I told her I had a cane. I said it wasn't a cane because I was crippled. It's a fancy walking stick. And a number of times in his diary, he talks about buying or having somebody give him a present a walking stick. Now, all these things, again, individually, are little things, but each one keeps adding up and adding up and adding up. It wasn't until I got to December 5th, 1886. Now, again, at the very end of my regression, I had said, and again, I felt so emotional, I wanted to cry, she died of a blood clot. The doctor said she died of a blood clot. And again, I had no idea who this woman was. I knew she's somebody very important to him. Well, according to his diary, actually, I knew also from studying back, there were only two women. His wife, Bertha, who he loved very much, and his mother, who he dearly, dearly loved. His mother was the only one who supported the idea of being an artist. His dad was a retail grocer, owned a retail grocery business in Chicago. And his dad always told him that being an artist, the best way he knew was starving to death. His dad did not want him to be an artist. It was foolishness. But his mom actually encouraged him. She bought him his first easel and paintings and always encouraged him. So I knew it had to be either his mother or his wife. Well, he put in his diary on December 5th, 1886, his mother, while in church, had a stroke caused by blood clot and died. You know, I think that was probably the one that threw me over the edge. It really did. I mean, come on. You can know a lot of things about a person. Even if you've seen his work somewhere, you can know with little things about him. There's nowhere you're going to learn that about his mother dying of blood clot. That's not going to be any kind of little sketchy biography with a painting. They're not going to talk about that. I think that was one that threw me over the edge. So I realized then, Bob, you're not going to find what you're looking for. You're heading down the wrong path. Person A didn't commit this. You need to go toward person B. I think that was probably the one that convinced me. And actually, in the end, at first I only confirmed 26 of them. And eventually I had a couple of readers write me about two of my things I couldn't prove. They sent me proof that the other two were true. And so actually I ended up confirming all 28 facts. And and people ask me about that, what does it mean and everything. And the problem was not accepting what I'd found, but accepting what it meant. I mean, okay. Obviously, I was able to recall 28 things about a man's life who's never famous enough to ever have books written about him, ever have movies about him. There was absolutely nothing about him. A few teeny mentions in huge art books. All there ever was about this man. And again, his diaries had never been published. They were simply kept in the archives. And people will ask me sometimes, why would you keep his diaries? If he was so, unknown, so minor, why did I keep him? There's a really good reason. Beckwith, during his life, was a real social butterfly. Beckwith knew everybody. Beckwith was good friends with Mark Twain. He and Mark Twain were neighbors. They both had homes up in the Catskills. He was neighbors. He'd come over to Mark Twain would come over and sit on Beckwith's porch and talk to him. And they were drinking buddies. The village where they had their summer home was Dry Village, but Beckwith kept liquor in his house, and Mark Twain would come over there. He knew Theodore Roosevelt. Him and Theodore Roosevelt were buddies. He knew him. He knew Sarah Bernhardt, the actress. He knew William Chase, the artist, Claude Monet. And interesting enough, Oscar Wilde, the famous British author, he actually came to America a while. When he came to America, he stayed with Beckwith. People don't know this. When he came to America, visit America, he stayed with Beckwith in Beckwith's apartment. He was good friends with Oscar Wilde. So the point being, it's in his diaries. Beckwith tells about little anecdotes of all these famous people, about anecdotes about Mark Twain, about Oscar Wilde, and Theodore Roosevelt, all these things. And that's why they kept them. Not because anybody gives a damn about Beckwith, because he was nobody, but historians do care about the little anecdotes he tells in his diaries about other famous people, and that's basically why they were kept. But anyway, back to my original point it wasn't the fact I proved. Okay, I've confirmed all 28 facts. Okay, which means I know the only thing I think of. How would I know these things unless I did experience them? But what really bad is you got to think, how does this affect your life? I mean, what does this mean? This means that my whole worldview up to this point has been wrong. That everything I thought about how the way world worked was wrong. That the people I kind of rolled my eyes at and snickered at were right, and I was wrong. That the world doesn't work the way I thought. It works in a completely different way. And it took me a while to really be able to accept that. It was not an easy thing to accept, to completely have to readjust your worldview. To think, okay, this is not the way that the world works a completely different way than you think it does. And that was a tough thing to do. It really, really was.
Well, I have to cut in here because Jeff on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio actually put your photo beside James Carroll Beckwith's photo. And there are quite a bit of similarities in the way you guys look.
Yeah, I've had people say that, but I always wonder, why would you? Why would you want to carry over physical? Because there's a gentleman I know who does a lot of research in past life regression, and he's convinced that people carry over physical things. And it's kind of like people have asked me about, okay, do you have any skills as an artist? Actually, no. I have no skill. Matter of fact, I was a straight A student my whole life. I was a summa cum laude graduate from college, got straight A's in high school. Only one time in my life to ever get an F in any coursework. And you know what that was? Art. And the only time I ever got an F, I was, like I said, I was a straight A student otherwise. One time in my life I got an F, only one time. It was an artwork. Because people want to think that but again, to me it makes sense. Why would I want to carry it over? I've done that. I mean, why would I want to do that again? And I feel the same way. People have told me this, that you said about physical. And I always wonder, why would you do that? Now, the gentleman I told about is convinced that people carry this in your DNA is why you have physical similarities to people. I don't know. Again, I'm just a police officer. The only thing I can talk about is what I investigated and what I found. The big, long, philosophical and theological questions are really beyond my purview. They really are. Because people have asked me all the time, well, what does this mean, the scope of the world? That's beyond that's not what I do. I was a police officer. I knew how to investigate things. And this was a very tough investigation. It really was. This was not an easy investigation. But I know how to do that, and I was able to do it. And that's one thing I can really talk about. When people start discussing the philosophical and theological implications of this, that's kind of beyond me. I listen, but I can't really say yay or nay either way what it means.
Do you think the similarities that you came up with, I mean, there is more than just coincidence there. Do you think that those were just flashcards coming at you from notes in your reincarnation, or looking back at your reincarnation?
Because I didn't include a lot of stuff in the book. A lot of stuff I didn't, because it sounded like I'm trying to sell it too hard. A lot of bizarre things happened during my writing of this book. I mean, things by themselves were just really bizarre little coincidences. But you don't keep adding coincidences. Like I said, you just don't keep up. For example, several times during this writing of the book, my wife was death on this. She was death on me writing a book, and for good reason. She knew there'd be a trouble with the police department if this ever come out. She was death. But anyway, during my writing, a couple of times, I decided I'm going to quit. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to send back my advance money. I'm not going to do it, because is it worth losing your police career over this? But anyway, both times, twice I really had decided I'm not going to do it. Both times something really bizarre happened. The first time I decided, I was going to tell my wife that night. I was going to tell her at work. I get a call from the Berry Hill Gallery in New York City. This is a very upscale art gallery in New York City. And they called me and says, we understand you're doing research on James Carroll Beckwith. Because during a time, I had been hunting for the hunchback woman. I had called a number of art galleries in various places. And during it, the art world's a very little closed community. And people realized I was doing research on Beckwith. And so they called me and said, yeah. They didn't know why I was doing research. I said, yeah. They said, well, we want to know if you know where any of his paintings are. We're trying to get a hold of him. We're going to have an exhibition of his work. And I thought, really, that was kind of useful, because his work has never sold for very much. It's not that good. Bottom line, it's not that good. It never sold for more than a couple $1,000s. It really hadn't done it well. And I said, but the interesting part was, they've been playing this for several years, unknown to me. I've been writing a book for the last year. But they were opening the exhibition the very same day, the exact same day my book was coming out. I thought that was, and then I asked the person at the gallery, I says, why would you do an exhibition of Beckwith's work? I said, it's never sold, never been worth it, never done well. And the lady told me, I don't know. That's somebody, we just decided this a couple of years ago, and it sounded like a good idea. And interesting enough, they had an exhibition for 30 days there, and I actually went to it. I wanted to see some of his paintings in the States, so I went to the exhibition. Do you know how many paintings they sold?
Every one. None.
Not a single one.
None.
Not
Wow.
a single one. They didn't take a single. He's not that good. I mean, bottom line, Beckwith was competent. Put it this way: if you wanted a portrait painted, but you didn't want to spend the $25,000 to have John Sargent do it, or the $10,000 William Chase or Carl Storan would charge, you could get a competent portrait done. Beckwith would be a competent portrait for $1,000. So I mean, again, but it wouldn't be a masterpiece or great. And so, it's one of the things. But so his paintings are not that good. They're simply not world masterpieces that demand a lot of money. But they didn't sell a single, but not one. And I thought it was kind of interesting about the exhibition opening same day as my book coming out. And again, why? So anyway, a second time, okay, again. What happened is I had told people what I was doing. People had belonged to an organization about past lives because I was doing research. So anyway, an astrologer, but apparently a friend of these people, called me, and she said, "Well, do you know when Beckwith was born?" Yeah, I did, because in his autobiography he said that he was born at 9:00 in the morning while his dad was hunting with a friend on September 24th, 1852. Or September 23rd. I'm sorry, September 23rd, 1852. So I knew exactly what hour he was born. She said, "Well, if you can find out when you were born, I can do it." She wanted to do a parallel astrological chart of us. Now I'm going to tell you something. Now, I may have been converted back to reincarnation. I'm certainly never a believer in astrology. But now, I don't want to just completely kick out the door, because I would have said something about reincarnation. But I want to see some proof. But it kind of bugged me, because I thought, do I really, really want to be lumped into these people? people think I'm also a believer in astrology because I believe in reincarnation. So again, I decided, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do another book. But I had promised a woman I'd find out when I was born, what time of day. So, but I thought I'm not going to write this book. I'm going to give it up. But anyway, so the only person still alive, who had been around, because I looked at my birth certificate, it says the day I was born, but not the time. So the only person who knew would have been my aunt. And so I called her and I asked her what time I was born. Now, I knew where Rebecca was born because she said 9 o'clock the day I hunted a friend. And I says, do you know what time of day I was born? She says, yeah, you was born about 9 o'clock. Your dad was out hunting with your uncle. Now, to me, again, this is just a kind of interesting little coincidence. But they happen in droves. Things like this happen in droves. It just happened over and over and over. I mean, I probably had 2 or 3 dozen little bizarre coincidences like it happened when I was writing the book. It's one of these things where you realize something's telling you need to keep writing this book, Bob. Something's telling you need to keep writing this book. But interesting enough, once the book was published, they stopped. I haven't had a single thing happen since the book was published. Nothing. Zero. And you think it'd keep it going. But once the book was published, everything stopped. No more coincidences. Nothing Bob Beckwith. Zero. But I came during feeling when I kept wanting to not write the book. Something was telling me, yes, you do need to write the book, Bob. Yes, you do. Keep it going. Because every time both times I tried to stop, this little bizarre coincidence happened the very same day I decided to quit.
Question coming from our audience, and this one comes from Renee, who is asking, did you meet the person you were going to prove wrong, and what happened there?
Yeah, I did. I called her, and it was one of those things. I didn't know what to say. I called her, and I was kind of flabbergasted because I was so flustered. I called her right after I come out of the regression because I promised I would tell her what I thought, and I was so flustered. I wasn't sure what to do. I basically told her, well, I don't know. I said, I don't know. It was all confusing. It was very vivid. And I told her I can see where people would believe this is the past. At that time, I still wouldn't admit it. But I remember telling her that I can see where people would believe. It was so vivid. I could see where people would believe it. But I'm not sure what I saw. Of course, since that time, she knows about my book, and we've conversed quite a bit since that time. She realizes now that I do believe it. And she's right, I was wrong, obviously. But at the moment, that right after it happened, again, I had promised I didn't really know what to say. I mean, I was so flushed about what happened, I just basically told her, well, I can see why you would believe it, but I don't know. It was one of the things I didn't know what to say. I really didn't know what to say. But since that time, we're friends. We've always been friends. And I wasn't that much a friend then at the first time, but since that time, we've talked a lot about reincarnation and things like that. Of course, we're very good friends now.
On that note, I'm going to get you to hold on as we got another half an hour to go with you. And I want to get into the whole reincarnation aspect of everything when we come back. Author Robert Snow is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. What a story it is. Portraits of a Past Life Skeptic, the true story of a police detective's reincarnation. He's got many other books on Amazon. I highly suggest you go on to Amazon.com, type in Robert L. Snow, pull up all his books. Some good reads in there. Make sure you do that. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Hour number 3 coming up right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Thanks for being with us. Tomorrow night on the program, little Mikey Morin is back. It's Ghosts of the Great White North with Mike Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada. And guess we get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Our archives are all stored on YouTube, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. They are free for you to listen to. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Secundo Genitor. Secundo Genitor is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or so much more. And we're going to be making some changes to our website as well coming up very, very soon that I think you will like. For the final time tonight, we introduce author Robert Snow. This man is a talented writer that I highly suggest you check out. All his books are on Amazon. The book we are talking about tonight is Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, the true story of a police detective's reincarnation. Robert L. Snow on Amazon, if you want to check out his books. Robert, thank you so much for coming back. I want to talk about reincarnation because in Western culture, we really haven't bought into the idea of reincarnation. Sure, we have heard about it through immigrants coming from the Middle East, whether it's India or Pakistan or somewhere along those lines, where their religion believes in reincarnation. But on the West here, it's not something that a lot of people believe or are very familiar with.
No. And see, that will cause problems if you're a police captain and you're talking about this and you're saying you have proof. Because believe me, this did not go well at the police. As my wife feared, and as other people tell me, this did not go well at the police department. It really didn't. Needless to say that the chief and the command staff are not happy with me, not happy at all. But, again, it's one of those things, I don't know what they really could do, but it kept getting worse and worse because this book, news say, raised quite a bit of media awareness, and so I was interviewed a number of times, and every time, I guess it got worse with the chief and the staff wasn't sure what to do with me. I mean, here's this police captain. You're supposed to be rock solid. You're you're the backbone of the police department, and you're all spouting this new age stuff. What really swung it is one day in my office, I was in my office in homicide. I got a call from this lady, and she says she's a producer, but they got a new television show out, and it's called Proof Positive. They want to know if I'd come on it. I'm always willing to do publicity for my books. She says, what we do, we try to do scientifically verified claims of the paranormal. I said, okay. She said, what we'd like you to do is take a lie detector test on national television. And again, I didn't, everything I told was the truth. I said yes, but then she hung up and I started to worry. Now, let me tell you why I'm worried. I wasn't worried because anything I said was false, but people have a misconception about lie detectors. Mechanical lie detectors are only about 80% effective. No matter how skilled the operator is and what have you, no matter how long he or she's done it, they're only about 80% effective, which means 1 out of every 5 times the examiner's going to say that you're telling the truth when you're lying, or more worse than me, is going to say you're lying when you're telling the truth. So it kind of worried me a little bit, but I'd already said I did. And if you didn't, come on, if you write a book like this and you refuse to do this, what does it look like? I mean, come on. It looks like, yeah, you got something to hide. So I went on national television. I took 2 lie detector tests on this show and passed them both. And I think that was the final straw for the police department. It really was. They got the chief staff. Because what happened is I was a captain for about 22 years of my career there, and I had helped a lot of younger officers as they were coming to the police department. I helped them get jobs they wanted, help them get promoted, this kind of thing. I had a lot of people who were loyal to me because I had helped them so much. Well, at this time, the chief's command staff, 2/3 of his command staff had worked with me at one time, and they were all very loyal to me. So I had several sources on the chief's command staff tell me what was happening during the chief staff meetings, and it wasn't going well for me. And especially found out after the TV program Proof Project came out, and I passed 2 lie detector tests. It did not go well. And when I was put in homicide, I had come in the year before I'd come in. We had the highest number of homicides ever in Indianapolis. And they put me in there, and the homicides started going down, and they went down every year I was there. The clearance rate went up. In fact, the last time I was there, we had an 83% clearance rate. Homicides were at like a 20-year low. But they moved me out after the Proof Project show. They moved me out of homicide and moved me down to the citizen service desk. The citizen service desk is a place where people come in to get photographed or get fingerprinted or look up records. It's a place they put captains who are about ready to retire, which was the message I was supposed to get. So it didn't go well to police. They bumped me out of homicide, put me there, trying to force me to retire. It didn't went about bad as my wife thought it would go. About bad my wife thought it would go.
Wow,
it didn't go
they
well.
really tried to erase your memory here.
Yeah, well, they wanted me to retire. They wanted me to leave. They really did. It was time. They wanted me to get out of there. It was time. They basically put me in a place, like I said, where they put people. In other words, if you tell them you're going to retire in 3 or 4 months, that's where they put you at to let you sit there till you leave. Well, that was the message I was supposed to get. It didn't go well. But I was talking earlier about things that happened, coincidences that happened, is that during Beckwith, interesting enough, from reading his diaries, he quite often referred to working on his scrapbooks. He kept scrapbooks, working on scrapbooks. I could not find where they were at. I could never find any reference anywhere where they were at. Well, when I was searching for the portrait of the Hunchback Woman after it disappeared from the art store got out of business, I called a art dealer in New York who had a Beckwith painting for sale. It was not that Beckwith. It was one called Fences. It was a picture of a painting of a fence in New York City. Beckwith's family had family in New York who he visited a lot. And so he went. So anyway, he painted that picture. So I called the man and said, "You have it. You have this picture back with. Do you know where the painting Hunchback Woman's at?" Again, this is pre-internet days, and he didn't. But he put me in contact with an expert in American art he uses. Apparently, there's a lot of forgery in American art. I didn't realize that. So he has this lady authenticate any paintings before he buys or agrees to sell them or buys them. So anyway, he put me in contact with a lady, and we were talking for a little bit about the Hunchback Woman painting and everything. And just out of the blue, I didn't ask her, but out of the blue, she told me, "You know his scrapbooks at the New York Historical Society, don't you?" And again, it was just one of the things, this information just dumped in my lap, and I didn't. And so I thought, well, great. So I actually went to New York to look at the scrapbooks. But while I was in New York, I had gotten Beckwith a death certificate, because I found that there was a book called the Who Was Who in American Painting, and it said Beckwith died from a suicide. Now, I saw his death. When I went to his death during my regression, I didn't say nothing about suicide. And I thought, could this be right? So I actually called the medical examiner, the head medical examiner in New York City. Of course, at that time I was the head of the homicide branch here, so he took my call, to say. And I told him, I'm looking into a death of a man died in New York City, and I told him who it was. I didn't tell him why I was doing this, and there's nothing, he never asked. So anyway, I asked him, would you look up and see what James Carroll Beckwith died of, okay? Because I thought, this is suicide. I didn't know. My regression's all screwed up because I didn't see about suicide. So anyway, he looked it up and called me back the next day and said, nah, he died of endocarditis, which is an infection of the heart valves and causes a heart attack, and he died, which of course fit a lot better with what I saw and everything. So he actually photocopied and sent me a copy of Beckwith's death certificate, which said he died of endocarditis. It wasn't a suicide. I'm not sure who's who in American art got the information, but obviously it was an error. So anyway, but on the death certificate, it said he was buried in Kensico Cemetery, which is just north of New York City. So while I was in New York City looking at the scrapbooks and doing research, I thought, how cool would that be? Now, how cool would it be to go to your own grave while you're in there? Come on. And I thought, how cool would that be? But every time I thought about it, I get these flood butterflies too in my stomach. Like, it's something again, like, is this really good? Is this a really good idea or not? But anyway, my last day in New York City, I decided I'm going to do it. So went out to Grand Central Station, got a train. Kensico Cemetery is in Valhalla, New York, which is a suburb north of Chicago. Not Chicago, New York City, north of New York City. So I got there on the train and went up to Valhalla, New York, got off, and went to Kensico Cemetery. Kensico Cemetery is a huge, huge cemetery. Everybody who is famous in New York City apparently is buried there. There's all kinds of famous people buried. So I went to the office and told them I was looking what grave I was looking for. So they drew me a map. And so I decided I could walk up there and see it. It was a beautiful, pleasant day. So I walked across the cemetery to this place. Now, I found where he was at. He was at the top of a hill. He was buried on the top of a hill. And I got there, and his grave, as I started approaching his grave, I got this terrible anxiety attack. Now, when I was a new officer in the police department, I wasn't used to things. Whenever I got into a really dangerous situation, I'd usually have an anxiety attack. You'd start sweating, your hands would start shaking, you get electricity through your fingers, and always my left knee would start shaking. My left knee would shake like crazy. But what I do in the police department is I just lock my left knee and go on in and take care of it type thing. Well, as I started approaching Beckwith's grave, I got this terrible anxiety attack. I was sweating, my hands were tingling, my left knee was shaking like crazy. And I walked up to the grave, and I couldn't make a stop. And I'm thinking to myself, how silly this is. I said, Bob, there's nothing here but a body. There's no ghost in here. The spirit was in him, is in you. There ain't nothing here to be scared of. I could not stop it. I just had this terrible anxiety attack. But anyway, I wanted to get a picture of myself there. I wanted to, prove I'd done it and actually include it in the first edition of the book. So I actually found some people worked there. I went and found them. And it was funny, when I walked away from the grave, the anxiety attack stopped. It was gone. I was back fine normal. So I asked some workers there, would you take a picture of me at the grave? So I walked back to the grave, and I got this terrible anxiety attack again. I could not stop shaking. My knee was just shook like crazy. I was sweating, and my heart was palpitating the whole time I stood there. And I don't know why it took this guy so long. He kept focusing the camera. I thought he was going to take forever. So he finally took the picture. And I got out of there. And I've had a lot of people trying to explain what happened there. I have no idea why that happened. Only that was certainly bizarre. I have no idea why you would have an anxiety attack at a grave of someone who died back in 1917. And obviously, if you believe in reincarnation, there's nothing here but a body. Any spirit is gone. It's inside you. So I couldn't understand why I would have that kind of anxiety attack.
I got a question coming up in our chat room right now from, where is it here? From Trip. He is asking, do you think you were getting harassed for religious reasons, i.e. other officers thinking maybe you had joined a cult or something?
Well, that's interesting because they wouldn't do it. Boy, you'd be a terrible ground for a lawsuit there, wouldn't it? The thing about being a police captain is you don't get to ask about assignments you get. You don't get a choice. You don't say, gee, I don't want that job or I want this job. You go where the chief appoints you. You don't have any decision making. So when they moved me on homicide, there was no appeal process. Do I believe it was because of the book? Sure it was. I have no doubt in my mind it was because of the book and because of my beliefs. But can you prove that? No, because again, the chief doesn't have to explain to you. You're part of his staff as a captain. You go wherever he tells you to go. That's just the way the police department works. There is no thing where you get your three top choices or anything. You go where he says. But do I believe it? Yeah, I do. I believe it. But would they ever admit it? Of course you wouldn't. You put yourself in for one hell of a position, one hell of a lawsuit. If you admit you move someone because of their religious beliefs, you couldn't do that. But do I believe it? Yeah, probably so.
Getting back to reincarnation for a moment, what do you think is the cause of it? Do you think it is the truth that the soul never dies, it just moves forward into a different direction, or do you think that it is about life lessons on trying to get to a higher spiritual self?
I've had a lot of people ask me questions like this, but my problem is I was a cop, and I was a cop for 38 years, and my job is investigating things. My job is investigating tough cases. This was a tough case, and I would do it. When people ask me about the really deep philosophical or theological questions, that's really out of my area. It's truly out of my area of expertise. I have my personal beliefs of what happened. You're right. I believe the spirit obviously never dies. People ask me, where do you go? I don't have any idea. I can only tell you, the only thing I know is what I report in my book. I don't have any idea what happens in between lives, where you go in between, or the reason why you keep being reincarnated. To me, though, to me, it gives a real fairness to the world. Because, a lot of times life is not fair. For some people, life is truly unfair. People are born with terrible deformities or into abject poverty and everything. Other people are born healthy and live great lives and rich and everything. But if you look at through the concept of reincarnation, life's very fair. Everybody gets the chance to be poor, untouchable in Calcutta. Everybody gets the chance to be Bill Gates. Everybody gets a good lives where you've got money and you got to have good things happen. Everybody has a bad lives. So there is there is some serious fairness in life in general if you look at it from a reincarnation viewpoint. To me, that is the part that makes you feel good about the whole thing, is that even if you got a crummy life this time, if you've had a crummy life, bad things happen to you, this is one life of hundreds. Who knows where you'll be in your next life? You could be born to very wealthy parents, lead a nice, comfortable life, and have a great one. Or you could go through another bad one, depending on how your string of lives is going. But my point of the whole thing is that life is fair, because, again, this is just one teeny segment of your whole existence. So even if it looks pretty bad, it's just one part. You'll have good parts, too. So to me, it's very fair. And when I was a homicide captain, sometimes you go into scenes where young kids have been killed, 14, 15-year-old kids have been killed. You think, what was the point? I mean, if you believe in one life is all you get, what was the point of this? I mean, this person didn't get a chance to grow up or do anything. But if you look in the portrait of reincarnation, this is one little blip. This is one little blip on hundreds or maybe thousands of lives. I don't know how many you have, but how many ever you have. This is just one little blip, and you move on to a new life. So it's not really as quite as bad if you look at it to this viewpoint.
Has it changed your view on religious icons like God or whatever is above? Have you become closer to the afterlife, or do you fear death with your newfound spirituality?
No, I don't. Of course, naturally, I wouldn't fear it. Yeah, this takes away. If you really believe in reincarnation, there's no fear of death at all, because you don't really die. You simply go to another form. You simply go into another life. Now it was 30 years. Beckwith died in 1917. I was born in 1947. So there was 30. Now what happened in that 30 years? I have no idea. People want to tell you what happened. I'm not sure how they would know, but I don't have a clue what happened during that 30 years. But obviously, someone's in charge. So obviously, there is a superior being somewhere who's in charge of making these things happen. So I mean, certainly, I believe in a superior being, but I don't believe that I know enough to say, say specific things about the superior being, as a lot of religions do. A lot of religions will be able to tell you where he wears boxers or briefs type thing. They're that sure they know him that well. But I don't know. I know there is obviously someone in charge who makes these things happen. It's not me, certainly, but someone who has to control the cycle of the universe. But I do believe there's a God, certainly, but I don't know enough about it to describe him or have that much information about who or what he or she is.
Have you had any reincarnated lives with your current wife?
No, the only person I saw during the things I saw was my stepdaughter. Interesting enough, I saw her at the same, when I abandoned her, she was the same age she was when my wife and I got married. I thought that was kind of interesting. I saw her in the wagon with me. She was about the same age and looked exactly like she looked when my wife and I got married. And I thought she's the only one I saw that I recognized. But people will say, because I've read a number of books on past life regression since then. A lot of people will say they see people they know in this life and in past lives. A lot of times your mother in this life would have been your daughter in a previous life, or your sister was your aunt or something in a past life, or your husband was your good friend that was a good friend in the past life, this sort of thing. But she was the only one I saw.
Very, very weird. With reincarnation, have you thought about even looking towards the future, or what your next life after this one would be?
I don't think I can say it's what I discovered. What I discovered in my investigation. Again, I don't know what happened in between. I don't know how I decided. I don't know how I decided from being Carol Beckwith to being Bob Snow. I don't know what thought process or what planning went into those two. So I don't have a clue where I'll be next time. I mean, it's one of those things that maybe you don't want to know really, but I don't have any idea how I went from these lives to this one. So I certainly don't have any idea where I'm going next. So it'll be a surprise, certainly. But the only point is, like in most people, you go into the next life thinking this is the only life you ever had. This is it. Because most people believe this is the only life you got, only life I ever had. And I'll probably wake up my next life feeling that way and believing that too.
Do you think then that, or let me rephrase that, what do you think, or where do you think you were in between these two lifetimes?
I have no idea. Again, I didn't see any. Now, I've read some books by a gentleman named Newton, Dr. Newton, who talks about who's able to hypnotize people, supposedly take them. It's called Life. There's a book called Life Between Lives, where he supposedly hypnotized people to their life between, what happened between. Is this true? How would you verify this, though? My point is, how would you verify this? This is what people say they saw. But I'm a cop, or an ex-cop, a retired cop now. I want to see proof. I want to see, come on, let's see something. Let's see some facts. So people will be hypnotized and say they see what happens between lives. I don't know. Is it true? Who knows? You're just taking somebody's word for what they saw. I'd like to have a little proof. So I don't, but personally, I don't know. I didn't see anything in between life. Again, when Dr. Griffith would tell you go to another life, you'd have a little gray, it'd be like a gray fog for 3 or 4 seconds. Then you go in the next life. I didn't see anything what happened between. So I really don't know. I mean, again, it's something I didn't experience. So I couldn't know. I wouldn't know. I'd just be guessing.
Where do you continue your investigation, or how do you continue it now into reincarnation? Because obviously you can hear the passion in your voice about this. You still seem quite unsettled about searching for new answers.
Well, I tell you what, I had an idea after my book came out. I thought I would do a next book on trying to verify other people's reincarnations. I thought, I could I met a number of psychologists. When I was writing this book, I met a number of psychologists and psychiatrists who do past life regressions. And I thought, well, if I could get a number of cases from them, maybe I could verify other people's. And I found out something kind of interesting about past life regressions. Mine was what was called a full sensory regression, in which I not only experienced sight and sound, but also taste, feel, touch, taste, feel, and all smells. I could get all my senses. But it turns out that's extremely rare. Most people's regressions, I found listening to an awful lot of tapes, are rare, or they see things, but they don't have nothing concrete. I was lucky with the thing about Beckwith that I saw these things, and he had his diaries were still here. I mean, how often does that happen? I thought, boy, if I was trying, I couldn't find. I went through dozens of cases. People that psychiatrists sent me. I couldn't find anyone that had anything you could really grab onto. I mean, people would say, you see yourself as a farmer. You're working so and so. As we have a farm in Iowa in the 1800s. Your name's John, and all this, and this kind of thing. Even if you could find it, unless it was a really, really uncommon name, what would that really proved? Nobody had. And I couldn't find anyone who had the concrete details like I had. And so that kind of stuff, I really thought that'd be a great book if I could just prove a couple of them, or even give even minor proof a couple of them. But I went through dozens of cases, and very few people have really clear, like I did, very, very clear past life regressions. And unfortunately, a number of people have gotten. Dr. Griffith, who did mine, had several hundred people come to her after the book come out, wanting to have past life regression because they read my book and they wanted to have one. And she said an awful lot of people were disappointed because they didn't have a full sensory. They had a regular one where things were, you have some facts, but there's nothing you can grasp onto like I did. Because the problem is, if you remember something in the 1700s or the 16 or 1500s, there's no records. Where are you going to find records if you lived in a village in Romania in the 1500s? Where are you going to find records about, this kind of thing? There aren't. They don't keep it anymore. The only way, the records of those days are gone. They're just simply not kept. There's been too much turmoil, too many wars, too many government changes and things like this. Anything other than most, like 100 years ago, would really be hard to prove. It just would be. It's just, and the problem is awful. Like every one of my regressions other than Beckwith took place far back in history, and they were interesting and fascinating, but there's no way I could prove them. I mean, I saw myself as a monk, and my second time I went to her as a monk, I saw myself as a soldier in the Chinese army. But again, they were all so far back in history, there's no way to verify them. I was just very fortunate with Beckwith that not only did I have a full sensory regression, but that Beckwith had a diary that recounted every single day of his life from 19 to 65, which helped me, what according to you say, helped me tremendously. That was just very, very fortunate on my part.
We got about 2 minutes left with you here, and I want to ask you one quick question. Are you still skeptical?
About reincarnation, no. But it was always kind of funny. People seem to think since I believe in incarnation, I also believed in, astrology and numerology and, UFOs, and various things like that. And I tell people the same thing. If you can bring me the proof like I have for Beckwith, I'll believe it. But people always seem stunned that I won't accept these other things because I believe in incarnation. I won't accept these other things. But again, it took me a long time to accept reincarnation. I had to be hit in the head with the proof. I mean, the proof had to smack me in the face like it did before I'd accept it. So I don't really believe in astrology or numerology or, UFO abductions or what have you, not because I'm saying they couldn't be true. Because they could be. I didn't think reincarnation could be true. I absolutely thought that was foolishness, and I was wrong. So I could be wrong about these other things too. But I'd like to see some proof. Let's see some evidence, and then I'll believe it. It's just a cop in me. I mean, I want to see. Let's see some concrete proof, and then I'll give it some credence. Just so come people's belief system. I'm just not that gullible, I guess.
My friend, do me a quick favor. Plug your books. Tell our audience where you could get them. And just so you know, audience, we have already talked with Robert about bringing him back in October about some other topics like cults going into the Halloween month. So we're going to get Robert back very, very soon.
Yeah, I have 18 books on print right now, and they can all be found on Amazon.com. They put Robert L. Snow on Amazon.com. They'll come. Everything will come up. The book you were talking about tonight is called Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, and it's available on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com or in most bookstores and get it for you too.
Appreciate your time, Robert. Really thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Coming up next, we have The Encounter with Everett Themer, and we're also going to be joined by our lawyer, SOR lawyer, Michael W. Hall.
This is the winter of our lives. We come to play the final scene. The curtains closing in the darkness we expose what lies beneath.
We bring you The Encounter tonight on Spaced Out Radio, where every night at this time we bring in Everett Themer from The Encounter Online, our resident news director, who comes on in, tells us the weird, the wacky, and the WTF stories of the day. So we bring in Everett Themer right now to introduce the news. Everett, what is going on, my friend?
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm very good, but this is a little disturbing. This is a little disturbing, going into this, because usually we like to have a lot of fun on the weird and wacky side of The Encounter Online. But this story that you have, and this is why we're bringing in our resident lawyer, Michael W. Hall, to come on in as well. We need to talk about this. This is an important kind of breaking news here.
It is. It's very important. MGM Resorts International, the parent corporation of the Mandalay Bay Casino, filed suit against the victims of the mass Las Vegas shooting in federal court, claiming that they had no liability in the incident and that any claims that these victims may make against them need to be dismissed.
No kidding. How many people were suing Mandalay Bay over this?
Well, I'm not exactly sure on the number of that. I mean, there were 58 victims and about 800?
About 600 that were wounded.
Yeah.
They're talking about 1,000 victims at this point.
Wow. That is an incredible amount. And, do you get pissed off, Everett, at Mandalay Bay for taking this action, or Or do you say, look, this is just the way it goes because they have to try and save their butts? I mean, an incident like this could literally cost them hundreds of millions of dollars.
You're right. And, my first response was, wow, what a horrible move. But then I can also understand it from a corporation's point of view. They have to protect their interests and their assets.
Mm-hmm. I think this is where we need to bring in Michael W. Hall, our resident lawyer here at Spaced Out Radio from UFOI team as well. But many people may not know, Michael, you're actually part of the Bar Association in Washington State.
Yes, you got it, Dave. They don't call me the paranormal lawyer for nothing.
Well, let's get your opinion on this topic here that Everett has brought up, because this is just breaking this evening about the Mandalay Bay and Resort suing the victims of this tragedy that happened back on October 1st of 2017, where 58 people lost their lives, for really no reason by the act of a madman.
Well, man, I am so glad that you and Everett are jumping on this thing, because this is late breaking news, and it is interesting stuff that seems to be developing on this ongoing story of either the tragedy at Mandalay Bay or the false flag in Mandalay Bay. And I'm going to try to come at it at a couple of different angles, as typically lawyers will do, just to throw out some ideas and some potential conspiracy theories about what's going on here. Everett is right. What initially it looks like on the face of this newspaper article is that they are basically judge shopping, this whole case around. If you were a large company like MGM, you probably would take a little umbrage at the fact that you are in a state court as opposed to maybe a federal court, where these victims are supposedly suing the Mandalay Bay. I would imagine the victims are, of course, trying to get a better deal and think they would get a better judgment in a lower court, like a state court. And of course, the big corporation is wondering at the bottom line is, well, we think maybe we can do better at the federal level here. And there's a lot of different reasons why they might be doing better at a federal level. We can get into that if you'd like. But there's also a conspiracy theory about this whole thing. I'm going to take a breath before I get started any farther than that and let you guys react to what I just said, but we can get into it further if you'd like.
Everett, feel free to jump in here at any time, but I mean, the only real conspiracy that I see with this, besides, and I've looked at both sides of this. I mean, the multiple shooters, if there was any or not, but I mean, there has to be some responsibility on the hotel, you would think, with the amount of cameras that saw this gentleman, which they have released the tapes, a few months ago, about the amount of luggage he was bringing into that suite for one man. Everett.
I wanted to ask, being that this would technically be a state crime, it's not a federal crime, is there any precedent to give a federal court jurisdiction to rule on a case like this?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's always different causes of action that you can bring in federal court that you might have an opportunity to bring in a lower court if you didn't want to. So this is, as the defendant's attorneys, actually it's the plaintiff's attorneys, the victim's attorneys are saying, is that this is something they can do, but they think it's egregious, and they are just shopping around for a better deal, potentially to save them money in the long run. It's not unprecedented, that's for sure.
Do you think the victim? Go ahead, Everett.
Can the federal court throw this back down to a state court and just refuse to rule on it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they can. It doesn't happen very often that they would just, ignore a venue change. It'd probably have to be a really politically hot potato before they would do something like that. Of course, the conspiracy theorists out there would say, they probably have some judges on the federal level that they believe would rule in their favor compared to the state court.
What kind of legs do the victims have to stand on here in being countersued, Michael?
Well, they've got good lawyers on both sides of the fence, and they're going to be making their argument here that, this is a retaliation kind of a process, that they're just trying to sue them to, make them spend more money, weed out the real people that want to continue on with this lawsuit, and or the attorneys, for instance, that want to represent, the victims probably as a class. Some of them are, I'm sure, represented by representing more than probably even a group of the victims. So it's kind of like a process of wearing down the opposition, typically in something like this, and forcing them to either spend more money or time and see if they're going to wear them down. And there's also an issue that pops up in my mind about the idea of controlled opposition. I'm going to get real woo-woo here for a while, and you stop me if you think I'm getting too far out there. But if you were going to plan a false flag that had an agenda behind it, maybe of gun control, whatever your agenda is for something like this potential massacre, what you might want to do is might want to have some victims out there that are actually crisis actors, and try to get as many of them as possible together after an event, and basically try to start a lawsuit to show that there were so many people involved in this incident that they were actually injured and or killed. And what if not all of that is true? So what you do is gather together a whole bunch of victims, represent them with good legal counsel, and then you do the political wranglings through the courts to try to minimize their claims, and or get a federal court to throw out the claims completely. And what you've accomplished, of course, is your end goal of showing that there's an egregious amount of people that are affected by this terrible incident, and we need to worry about gun control again, and no one has to pay a whole lot of money. But there's a lot of folks involved in a false flag event of something like that. That's just a really far-fetched theory that I've been thinking about lately.
Seems to me it would be hard to find 1,000 crisis actors to pull this off if it were a conspiracy.
Well, you're right, Everett, but here's the interesting thing, and I've researched a little bit about this whole incident. There are some, I'm not going to say all, but I'm saying some of the deceased victims from the Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas shooting were not real victims of the shooting. As a matter of fact, some of the individuals and Social Security numbers that were claimed to have died in the Mandalay Bay shooting they actually passed away on the same day as the Mandalay Bay shooting, but they passed away in different states under different circumstances, and their basically personas were gathered after the fact and claimed to be victims of this thing. I mean, that's how I started this whole idea when I found out that some of the actual victims were not. They were victims of other deaths on that same day, but they weren't victims of the shooting. So I'm just thinking out loud on this one.
But couldn't that just be somebody trying to commit fraud? I mean, we see that all the time. I mean, in any type of tragedy, there's always the lowlifes who try to commit fraud in these types of situations. We even saw it during the forest fires here. Insurance fraud claims, theft.
Yeah.
Well,
guess what? These mistaken or people that died of other causes other than the shooting have not been claimed to be frauds. You would think that a company and an attorney that was representing a large company like this would try to weed out the fraudulent claims immediately. They've never done that for those folks. Though you're right, Dave, that happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to jump in there. I don't really think this was the act of some sort of crisis act or false flag kind of thing. I know people, Jamie Sexton, who will be on Thursday night, a couple of his friends were actually shot in that. And, I'm not buying this. I think it was the work of a madman. But, I mean, it was concerning to me that it did seem to take extremely long while the shots were being fired for police to go into that room.
Yeah, of course, that's, what the victims' lawsuits would be based upon, of course. Malfeasance or whatever on part of the hotel and or the hotels if there's multiple shooters, like you were mentioning earlier. There's a whole lot of questions about that entire event. And now this kind of twist of the court actions is kind of just the latest in an interesting saga of this entire event.
So what happens if this higher court rules then that MGM isn't responsible for any of these claims? Do the victims then have any recourse, or, other than taking this up to the, working its way up to the Supreme Court, is there any other recourse that they have, or do they just have to begin the appeal process?
Well, yeah, they would definitely begin the appeal process to try to go farther up the chain of command as far as the courts go. It's very difficult to get certiorari in the United States Supreme Court. You might be working on a case for decades, possibly, before the court is in a configuration with the personalities, the justices that are currently on the bench, that they would like to review a case that you're involved with. So, for instance, it wouldn't necessarily happen very quickly that they could even appeal this to the United States Supreme Court, let alone the fact that the court might just say, this is not a cutting edge part of the law that we need to deal with. It's already there's plenty of precedent below in the federal courts or state courts to take care of the decision here that's going to be made. They only take those things that really need to be kind of honed and defined as far as the law goes.
Michael, I want to ask you about blame here. A lot of times when we have, and I'm getting this after reading John's comment in the Spreaker chat room, and I think it's worth mentioning to you, a lot of people, when death happens, are always looking for someone, some company, something to blame. Is that a case here, and is that why you believe Mandalay Bay has maybe, countersued the victims who have sued them?
Well, I don't know that the Mandalay Bay folks are worried about the blame. They're worried about the bottom line, I would imagine, as a corporate entity, trying to cut down on whatever judgment, if any, would come their way. Everett is right. I mean, this is a multi-million, billion-dollar case that could be settled out of court at any given time, which sometimes does happen. But of course, before that happens, the MGM is testing the water, see if they can get out of this without having to pay as much as they've probably already budgeted for it.
They must have a number, though, on what this potentially could cost them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have experts that do nothing but just make the actuarial, forensic computer analysis costs on something like this. Right from the beginning, they know and or have a clue of what the bottom line. It's, for instance, it's like when an airplane goes down for whatever reason. There's an airplane crash or whatever. The insurance companies that work with the airlines, they know exactly, well, not exactly, but they know basically what it's going to cost to settle this entire matter. They know what a human life is worth under certain circumstances, and they kind of do business in that regard to prepare for those things.
But doesn't this open up a potential public relations nightmare? I mean, just on the face of this, you look at it and it sounds like MGM International, if they drag this out, they deny closure to all of the families of these people. And I don't imagine that a number that large is going to let this just go away without being vocal about it at some points. And it seems like it just opens up the potential of being a disaster for MGM.
Well, here's how MGM is spinning this, by the way. MGM is saying, you know what? We do not need to drag this out for a long period of time in state court and then eventually have to appeal this to a higher court later on. We need to just go straight to federal court, try to get the thing resolved immediately, and it'll be better for the families. That's their argument. I just, read it in the press releases.
Do you think that maybe means that they already have a settlement figure in mind? I mean, if they're trying to fast track it up,
yeah, right.
Do you think that they maybe have a figure for each person in mind already?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're right, Everett. If, for instance, they're claiming that there's 1,000 victims, right? They're doing the old crunching of the numbers and they're saying, well, what is each victim worth? How many millions is a body worth, is a person worth at their age? There are actuarial experts out there that can actually come up with a figure. Insurance companies do this all the time with payouts of life insurance and all those kinds of things. So they know not exactly what I keep saying exactly, but they basically know what their costs could be. And all they're doing at this point is trying to whittle that down.
And when does that settlement come into play? When do they make that offer? If they already have it in mind, why drag this out and sue the victims? Why not just come out and begin the offer process?
Yeah. Well, that's just standard procedure. You don't ever want to negotiate against yourself as a lawyer representing a client. You want to go through all the machinations that you're trained to go through and see what happens. They have no idea what's going to happen down the road. My goodness, we might have a EMP pulse that puts everybody back into the 18th century, well before this thing settles, and all of a sudden, the act of God gets them out of the trick as well. So, they're just kind of going through the motions of whatever they normally do. And at one point, it might come to that point where they say, well, let's fish and cut bait right now. Let's get this thing over with.
I want to ask you and go back to what Everett was questioning about the PR nightmare that this is going to cause. A lot of people are going to read the headlines. They're not going to read the story because it's a very easy headline to read that Mandalay Bay casino owner sues survivors of Las Vegas gun massacre immediately. And that's basically the truth of the story. It's not clickbait or anything like that. This is going to turn into an absolute PR nightmare for MGM International, or has the potential to do so. Would the lawyers or the accountants have been notified about this previous to this decision made by the lawyers and obviously the board of directors? Like they had to do a Benjamin Franklin here.
Oh yeah. They're weighing the cost benefits of this entire situation and what they need to do to either prolong this thing or make it change the venue of this thing so they can get a better deal. And they have weighed the PR loss on this thing. I'm sure they do that right from the very beginning when they're thinking of a strategy that they want to do. And obviously this is a major strategy that they've come up with. But I don't know, given the fact that people still flock to Vegas and still gamble and still take vacations and things, I don't know that their losses in the long run will probably make a whole lot of difference to them.
Okay, then let me
go ahead, Everett.
Let me ask this: what are the ramifications of this on other unfortunate future mass shootings?
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's a very good perspective to take, Everett. You know, in the long run, does this put a chilling effect upon the whole idea of victims being able to sue under circumstances similar to this? Of course, you got attorneys out there all the time that will try to make a case out of anything, even if it was a small matter. But a large one like this, they basically are going to set not a precedent. It's not a legal precedent, but it's a chilling factor, you know, for things like that in the future. You're right.
This is going to hurt them very much in the pocketbooks no matter what. I mean, whether it's future events, whether it is concerts, anything in any of their venues. Is the lawsuits and the cost of lawyer fees that are going to be involved in this even worth the value of even fighting yourself for a settlement amount?
You know, that's one of the things that I sit down with my client as well. If they've, for instance, been injured, if they have a claim, I set them down initially and say, you know, is it worth it to actually go through what you're going to be going through in the next few years or whatever to get a settlement, and we just pick a number that they think might be realistic? And I say, well, if you think that's realistic, are you willing to go through what it's going to take to get it? And I try to be realistic in that regard. But I have a feeling that these kinds of issues at this level are much more political than anything else.
We got about a minute and a half here, guys. Everett, I'm going to turn the questioning over to you.
Okay. Michael, I wanted to ask, at what point or how does a corporation argue that they can't be responsible for every guest that walks through their hallways, comes through their rooms? At what point does the guest have to be responsible for themselves? And maybe the hotel really was totally unaware and has no responsibility. How do they argue that?
Yeah. Well, Everett, that's the typical slip and fall case argument that any restaurant, hotel, anything like that, when a customer slips and falls and stuff, they will say that they had done their very best to a reasonable their reasonable ability to keep the place safe, but the customer actually has a caveat emptor kind of approach that they need to take as well. They got to take care of themselves and act like a reasonable person. So that's the bottom line when you kind of defend something like that.
Michael W. Hall, our resident Spaced Out Radio lawyer, thank you so much for joining us. Everett Themer, appreciate you bringing up this topic. Very, very important indeed that we got to this. I know we had to skip the thought of the Dave for this, but sometimes the story is bigger than the weird, strange, and the wacky news, and that will happen every now and again on The Encounter when breaking news like this happens. Everett Themer, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Michael W. Hall, you guys hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Also want to say a big thank you to author Robert L. Snow for coming on to talk about reincarnation and his incredible story about his past life regressions after 38 years of being on the police force. He really didn't buy it. We're going to bring him back on in October talking about cults and some other books that he has. Just look him up on Amazon. Robert L. Snow. It's going to be absolutely fantastic if you check out his books. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Little Mikey Morin coming in, Haunted Crew of Canada leader, and we are back with Ghosts of the Great White North. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. Mike comes in the third Wednesday of every month for Ghosts of the Great White North. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everyone listening in at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. A big thank you to everybody listening in and taking part on Spreaker. Thank you so much for all the comments. You were amazing. Everyone at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, and to the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thank you for sharing the show. Thanks for telling your friends all about us and what we do each and every single night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you all in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one, everyone. Good night.
1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.